Guess who's back? Back again on the ones and twos, the twos and ones, and it don't stop y'all. It's your man, Brother Ron, R2C2H2, the artist, with another one. We're live with another one. Just going to check the volumes and stuff like that. Welcome, family. I'm back on time. I'm hitting on time. We got a great show lined up for you all today. Celebration, because it's Friday. Payday all day, every day. If you on Biden money, if you're getting that Biden stimulus, it's payday every day, all day. You know what I'm saying? But all good things must come to an end. So thank y'all for joining us. It's Brother Ron. It's We All Be News Free Dixie for the 21st century. Just gonna check out some things, make sure everything's proper. Y'all can see and hear me. Let me know. Y'all pretty good and letting me know if you can hear and see me. Okay. Checking out the volume here. Got an early one. Let me see the volume's okay. Checking out the volume here. Got an early one. Let me see the volume's okay. Okay. What a difference a week make. Got a better Wi-Fi going on. So God is good. God is great. Universal God. We're waiting on Dr. Dick Gregory to hit us up. Going to be talking about his father's legacy and the new documentary that should be premiered on Showtime this summer. I want to say around the 4th of July weekend. So I'm glad. It's a blessing to be alive. So much going on in the world today. So we got, I think we got him here. Dr. Dick Gregory, how you doing?
Excellent, Brother Ron. How are you, sir?
I'm good. It's an honor to be on. So much stuff going on. It's craziness out here.
Absolutely. I apologize about the delay.
You good?
StreamYard for some reason wasn't working on I had to download Firefox in order to record. So I didn't realize that. I pride myself on my timeliness. So, but you got me fully dialed in. And after how long we went last time, fully energized. So I came prepared for you today, my brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know it's been 3 years. The time went by fast. I mean, this year will mark the 4-year anniversary of your father transition to a righteous ancestor. And there's so much that's been happening in his legacy. You're going to share with us today. I'm very excited to hear.
Definitely.
He's definitely omnipresent. Like I think about your father all the time. I look at a movie, his name pop up, his image pops up. I'll be reading some random book. They talk about Dick Gregory. I said, what the hell is this about? I can't really miss him.
He was out there for a long time. I mean, just the blessing of, the genetic blessing in my DNA, and then just the personal relationship that my father and I forged that was much greater than father and son. It allowed me to see so much that most folks never had an opportunity to see, and truly just appreciate the level of service. I mean, the level of sacrifice. Those things sound good, live, love, serve, and all. But I mean, this is someone who, he was hardwired differently. And so, yes, he was every. I mean, and I know we're going to get into this in a moment as we chop it up and start to talk about some of the things the estate is doing. But one of the very few things do I find hard. It's just as a former, as a fellow Torian brother, you can appreciate the hard work ethic, and it's always been that way. It just is the focus and allowing the universe to kind of guide your trajectory, and not fighting it, because it's it's easy. You get pulled. We all lose a parent. If the life cycle does what it's supposed to do, and we discuss this, we all, we're all going to lose our parents at some point. That's the natural kind of trajectory of things. Right. And I have a massive family, 9 brothers and sisters. 16 grandchildren at last count. There's 10 of us Gregorys, but only 4 of us have done the reproduction. I'm not part of that 4. I'm one of the reproductive slackers. So I'm one of the reproductive slackers. But the other 4 who have held it down, 16 grandchildren. So wow. And my dad raised all of us just to be, fiercely independent. And so that independence raised all of us, so we have different understandings, different plans, different what we think is the most befitting, and that's beautiful. It's never been off-putting for me. So it takes a minute for everything to kind of align and things to be where they're supposed to be, and it just, as we sit here now, coming out of COVID and the lockdown, and hearing my dad's voice, loud and clear. Let's just say that. And I don't. One of the agreements I made with my dad when in the early 2000s, when he was diagnosed with small B-cell lymphoma, we were. That's the first time in my life, even as a healthcare provider, it became very clear to me everything natural is not necessarily good for you. Cocaine's natural, heroin's natural, so everything natural is not good for you. So every healer on the planet started sending Brother Dick their remedies. Like, well, holy smokes, if we can get Dick Gregory well, then we're going to be put on financially. And some of it was out of love too. So I say some of that in jest, but there was a lot. I mean, every day we were receiving cases of things, and so. My dad traveled all over the world. We went down to El Salvador. There was just, but it was a product, a new gene therapy product, Rituxan, that my father had received at Cedars-Sinai. And being a healthcare provider and reading his PET scans real time, it was miraculous. I mean, he didn't want to do chemotherapy. He didn't want to do radiation because it was against his belief system. And part of our First Amendment rights are just those, right? You have the right, not, where, sometimes you hear of parents being forced for what their children should do, but as adults. So the pledge I made to my dad, because we were doing a lot of press after that time, because people wanted to know how Brother Dick was healed from cancer. Right. And we just said that we were not going to advise everyone to do the path that Brother Dick did, because most folks didn't have access. And a biggest part of it was the belief system. So you couldn't be at McDonald's breakfast, lunch, and dinner and then talk about, okay, give me the tea that Brother Dick's drinking. It's a lifestyle. Right. And that's part of our position. When you hear folks talking about vaccines you'll never hear me just, waving my finger and telling folks what they should do. My dad, and I know you spent some quality time, because I know, a lot of it was coordinated through me with at the source, at the well with Pops. He realized that he had a joke he would always tell. He said, I was in New York City, and I walked up to this brother. He had cocaine dust on his nose, track marks on his arm, and I offered him an apple, and he said, Brother Dick, but is it organic? And so sometimes when we don't want to do things, we start looking for all kinds. Well, I'm not going to take the shot, because Brother Dick said. And really, whether you get vaccinated or not is a personal decision. No one should feel bullied or swayed into it, just like you shouldn't feel bullied or swayed into doing chemotherapy or radiation. These are personal decisions, and they're lifestyle decisions. So they're not just, and again, I say this, if you really are not taking care of yourself, you're not taking care of your body and your mind, then you owe it to the rest of us to either get vaccinated or wear a mask, protect the rest of us. In what I've always said is, great, I'll limit, I have no problem wearing a mask. I'll wear the mask, and I don't wear the mask for me, I wear it for other folks out here. As a healthcare provider, I've worn masks frequently when I was dealing with patients with a compromised immune system. We politicized it and we turned it into something it's not. And meanwhile, the whole world is changing, and we're focusing on the things they want us to focus on. And that's also lots of people died, and lots of people died that shouldn't have died. It impacted our community even more so, because it's real simple. The math is not linear. We don't have the same access to healthcare, and you can't fix that within the snap of a finger. So when you say, well, run to CVS and tell grandma to go get the shot. Well, if grandma has an adverse reaction to the shot and she doesn't have readily access to healthcare, these are things that need to be taken into consideration. That's why you just can't get up on these pulpits and just tell people what to do. You never know what people are privately going through. So my dad and I agreed we weren't going to disparage people we had people calling and say, well, if Brother Dick's not doing it, I'm going to stop doing my chemotherapy, mid-chemotherapy. And these are lifestyle decisions. I honestly watched my father beat cancer almost mentally. by making an I was with him when he got the diagnosis. We knew something was amiss. When the lab results came back, we read the pathology report, it was very detailed. And that's the only time in my life that I saw the light in his eyes go dim. I dropped him at his home, planning to pick him up the following morning to take him to his primary care provider. And when I picked him up that morning, the lights were back to full on. He hugged me, we embraced, and he said, I don't have a care in the world. I'm not afraid. He was like, I thought about this before going to bed last night. And, he said something in a very Dick Gregory-esque way, but I had stopped listening to him because I was looking at the brother's eyes and just, bewildered and amazed at just how clear on a cellular level what he was saying to me and how much not he believed it, but it was his truth. And so a major part of healing is mental, it's psychological. So as we're dealing with so much fear and fear mongers amongst us, take care of your body, drink water, eat healthy food, reduce high fructose corn syrup. There's so many things that, we're 605 muscles, 202 bones. We're mammals. We're not machines. Get up and move. Get away from your screen. Push back from the table. Garbage in, garbage out. Stop putting garbage food in your body. It's not as hard. I mean, if you got a patch of dirt anywhere near you, start planting things, growing things. Slow down and reconnect with nature, and you'll be surprised how many of these diagnoses, which are real, start falling off. And just, the body's a self-healing organism, but it's hard to self-heal. It's hard to put a fire out if all day long you're throwing gasoline on it. So all of this is just, as we've been going through this and we're going through, we're well past 3 years, the sadness, and probably in the last interview, that you and I did. And from interviewing my dad and interviewing me before, as the interviewer, you won't have an opportunity to ask too many questions, brother.
Well, before you get to, I do want to ask, somebody in the chat made an interesting point. They want to ask, do you think Bobby Gregory would take the vaccine? I mean, you touched on it in a way.
So he took the vaccine every day in how he lived his life. So he took the vaccine every day. I mean, you spent time with my dad, copious amounts of, nutraceuticals. To watch Dick Gregory prepare a cup of tea was an experience in itself. Just reaching in his pocket and his crystal roots and his, raw this, organic that. So no, of course not. And I shouldn't say, of course not for him, but I know he also would not necessarily be doing a lot of finger pointing. It's difficult, and this is why it's difficult.
Okay.
People have it's what we call biochemical individuality. All of our levels of health. Homeostasis is what is the perfect level of achieved health, maximum healthiness for each individual. So what your maximum expression of health is going to be different than mine, and vice versa. And so you can't look at someone, and that's why some people would get this disease and they would have a massive immune, almost overreaction, and they were basically suffocating on their own, built up lymphatic fluid in their lungs. So to tell them, hey, you shouldn't get, if you're high risk, you need to have the decision, you should have an informed conversation with your healthcare provider. And if your healthcare provider simply says, oh, go get the shot without having an informed conversation, that's a disservice. You buy a new car, right? There's 3 different types of gasoline you can put into that car, right? Super, medium. But you can tell. I've been an electric car guy for some time, so I don't even know the grades of gas anymore. But you got 3 choices, and if I just say, hey, it doesn't matter, just put anything in the car, that's nonsense. So how can we say there's 3 separate shots you can get? It doesn't matter, just take any of them. No, there's real informed consent that needs to happen here. So you need to have an informed conversation with not just random healthcare providers that don't know your medical history and your medical records and your status, an informed conversation, and then, derive from that, if that is the conversation that you all collectively come to, what would be the safest, what would be the most, effective vaccine for you to take. As a Gregory, I'm one of the younger Gregory, so the younger 3 of us, I was never vaccinated. For anything. Like, that's how my dad raised us. So when I taught school, I'm a former Baltimore Public City high school teacher, and I remember we were required to report I think the statute of limitations up now, so I won't get in trouble for saying this. We were required to report which students were not vaccinated. And my position was, especially someone who was raised in a family of vegans and organic, and there was very few things outside in other than the way nature intended for it to be. I talked to the parents, and if it was parents who just, it wasn't a lifestyle for them, they were just out of neglect not vaccinating their kids, and they had started vaccinating and they weren't keeping with the vaccination schedule. Well, that's a different thing. That is neglectful. You pick where you want to be, and then you make that executive decision. So those were the only parents I put on my list, the ones who it was sheer out of neglect. The folks who it was a lifestyle for, and similar to how us Gregory's were raised, it was one of those rare times in life where I was in control of it and I could make an executive decision, and that was the executive decision that I made. So we should never, my dad would always say, fear and God cannot occupy the same space. So we should never make a decision, because we're panicking and we're fear. Is the science there? Absolutely. A pandemic, a virus, respiratory virus for certain. If you think of it as a wildfire, and now we have these big, tanker, water tankers drop. Okay, well, yeah, we got to put this thing out. It really is killing people. You look what's happening in India right now, and it's horrifying. So we just need to stop it. But we don't think about after we stop it. Well, this cat's house was destroyed because the tanker dropped the water right on his house. Well, okay. Well, the folks down the street who didn't get it right on out, well, they're still up and going. And that's kind of how the vaccine is. And that's how we all have to do our part in stopping the spread of this. I mean, that's not make believe. Again, I've done COVID testing here. I'm on the front line in Washington, D.C. I've been involved with the process. I've seen it. It is killing disproportionately our community. That's real. But as a result from that, we shouldn't have a knee-jerk response and just say, hey, go do that. Most of us put more time into, the research in the car we're going to buy or the house we're going to buy than we do what we put in our bodies. So, and it's easy. It's easy to say, oh, I'm not going to do it because Brother Farrakhan said don't do it, or Brother Dick said don't do it. You have to slow down, take all that information in definitively, and then make a decision about what you're willing to do to help. And it may just be, okay, like they're saying now, vaccinated folks can go out without a mask on. Unvaccinated folks should still wear a mask. Now, I know that's complicated to a lot of folks, but it's really not, because vaccinated folks, at least when we're looking at the statistical data, folks who are vaccinated, whether you're unvaccinated or not, if they contract the virus since they have some antibodies to it naturally, they've been vaccinated, it is no longer deadly. It's like the flu. I don't mind if I get the flu. I just don't want to die from it and be hospitalized. So, all the people we know who have died from AIDS does not kill you. AIDS suppresses your immune system enough so then a common cold or a cut and an infection then kills you. So same thing with this here. This virus is not necessarily a killer virus. Just getting it is not a death sentence. But if your immune system either cannot respond to it or overzealously responds to it, then it can be fatal. A car accident, 2 people can get out, 1 person, it's fatal. So we have to back up and look at how we live our life. And that's not easy. When things are difficult, so many times we just want, we want someone we trust to do the work for us and just tell us what to do. And, that's certain things we don't get a pass on. This is too important. And now, the long-term side of that, it's like, hey, do you do chemotherapy? Do you do radiation or not? Well, the chemo may save you from that brain tumor, but 10 years later, you may have a secondary cancer from the chemo. So we have to look at this from 30,000 feet up when you're making what is an acceptable treatment outcome. Right now, they want to stop the spread of this pandemic. Okay, well, if we're telling everyone drink, Flint water, and we may say, okay, well, this water tastes good. Well, 10 years later, we realize it's loaded with lead, and now we're sick with something else. The math here is not linear. It's far from linear. And so we shouldn't look at these things episodically. You have to look at how you live your life and look at the totality of your life and the folks that you love and we got to take care of our neighbors. to be responsible. So we should always do better about doing things to boost our own immune system. Don't wait. Don't have a reaction. The best plan is to build your immune system to a point that you're resilient against these things. I mean, there's people who've got Ebola and didn't get sick, and most people get it and die immediately. So, I'm not trying to be a test specimen for these vaccines. So I'm going to go out of my way to not get it. But the important thing is that we build and take care of our bodies and our immune system. All of the trillions of dollars that have been spent on cancer research, the one definitive thing that comes back is eat more green leafy vegetables, drink more water. I could have told you that for free. Brother Dick was telling you that his whole lifetime for free. You didn't have to pay us $1 trillion for that information. So that's you got to do the work. You got to do the work. It's not going to be easy. And like everything in life, most things that come easy, it's not worth it. I mean, pressure and heat make steel. Get down there, learn about your body. And many of us may learn something from this. There's going to be other microbes. I mean, there's more viruses. There's millions of viruses. So, and as we, as humans, continue to encroach upon nature, we start making, natural animals live in less natural habitats because they're forced to live closer together. And then we get these, zoonotical. We get these zoological transfers of viruses because things are living in, we blame it on wet lab. I mean, and most Americans, and most vegans will say, the killing of animals is inhumane any way you try, but it's always folks who, well, I eat pork, so I think it's shameful for this one to do this, or I don't eat pork, so I think it's this. It's all the killing of animals. It's really where we are just with technology and understanding, we could do better. So whether it's I don't necessarily get into one way is more healthier, because there's plenty of data out here that shows people that eat healthy meat products and tend to thrive. It's just what's better for our environment. The mass, I mean, we're not, when grandma and grandpa or great grandma and grandpa were on the farm raising their own chickens. Well, we didn't have millions of pounds of chicken waste, millions of pounds of chicken waste being dumped into the river systems. Now it's just it's industry. When we take things and we industrialize it, and that's what we did with I was reading an article the other day, close to 50 doctors, researchers, PhDs that were part of the COVID-19 research vaccine protocols development. Over 50, I forget, that was like 52, 53, went from and when I say this, I'm not being judgmental. So they were not millionaires at the time. They are now billionaires. So they skipped millions and went right to billionaires because that's how much money is in this. That's how, I mean, it's profound. I mean, it is absolutely profound. And whenever that much money is involved, it's problematic. And just so for me, answers. Right now, all three of these vaccines are under emergency use authorization. There's certain rules that come along with that. So, if you get sick, if you die, and there's so many things, that adverse reaction. I mean, any of these things can happen. You're limited. If not even that, if the practitioner, injects an air bubble in you, which can't happen, but if it did, you have no recourses because you're doing something that since you're doing something that is under an emergency use authorization, you give certain rights away when you do that. So I tell them, back up, understand what these things mean. And whenever we're rushing to market, whenever we rush something out, there's always fine tune. I mean, how many times you turn on the TV and it says, if in 2021 you were part of the group that did XYZ, you should contact our law firm. And so slow down, pump your brakes, slow down. But that doesn't mean slow down on wearing your mask, washing your hands, social distancing. These are time proven. I mean, a lot of my training was in public health. These are time proven things for respiratory disease. I mean, we virtually had no flu season this year. There was virtually no one, because we're all wearing masks. So it just shows the efficacy of wearing masks. I mean, respiratory droplets, respiratory vapors, how these things, and if everyone's masked up. Now, for most of us who are not going to die from the flu, are we going to always wear a mask? Probably not. But if we're going to visit our sick grandparent or parent, we may say, you know what, I'm going to take a moment to put on a mask. So we're all learning a lot. We've all got a crash course on health and wellness, and we need to do better. We all need to do better.
I got to ask you that because you got me thinking about your father, Baba Dick Gregory. What year? Can you remember the year he was diagnosed with cancer? That year?
1999.
Because I think that's very fascinating because he beat that. And I was thinking I saw clips online about some years ago where they had a fundraiser for him at the Kennedy Center in DC. And you had Rosa Parks and Coretta Scott King speaking. And I think Bill Cosby was the MC. And now look where we at now. They were gone within like a year of each other, maybe some months. And Baba was still going on.
Full remission, and I don't want to be accused of being over hypersensitive, but I was the brainchild behind that Kennedy Center piece. So it wasn't a fundraiser; it was a tribute. We just wanted to give him his flowers while he was here. So it was a tribute that we did it, where the proceeds went to the National Council of Negro Women, Dr. Dorothy Height, who was a dear friend of my dad. So it was, and yes, Bill Cosby was the MC. It was a Stevie Wonder, Isaac Hayes, Ozzy and Ruby. I was just looking at the photos the other day, and many of those folks transitioned prior to my dad. He was in full remission. So in 1999, we both picked up and relocated to LA for almost a year and a half, because after he was getting his Rituxan treatments, which was a gene therapy treatment we were doing at Cedars-Sinai Hospital. And there's a lot of good things that are coming. We can't just blanket dismiss all the medical advances that are out here. There's a ton of good things that are coming from gene therapy. There's not a lot of money in it. And so that's why you don't hear the hype about, if we're taking your genes, your white blood cells, and we're spinning them down and re-injecting them into you. I mean, look at the phones we communicate on now to the phones we communicate before. Not all technology is bad. Some of it we need to embrace. But so I remember, because I was part of his medical team, then looking at these PET scans, and the first PET scan we did of my dad, the PET scans were new technology then. And he lit up like a Christmas tree. He had significant cancer growths in his lungs, in his colon, in his pelvis, and in his neck. And so, and this is important, because a lot of people would say, well, Brother Dick, as clean as he's living, if he could, they forget. I mean, my dad was on the he's like a SEAL Team 6 before SEAL Team 6. He slept places that no human should. He spent 6 months in an Iranian prison, I don't know anything about the water in Iran. I don't know anything about the water in Flint than what they tell me. But all I know is it's a possibility, and I'm sure the best water is not reserved for prisoners in any country. So the fasting that he did. So when it was not medicinal fasting, he was starving himself for as civil disobedience. He was starving himself. He knew at any point then he could have died from what he was doing. He was willing to die for the movement. And so when you starve the human body, it doesn't first attack fat. It doesn't first metabolize fat. It first starts to metabolize muscle, which is the heart and the blood. And the muscle it first goes to is smooth muscle, primarily the heart and the lining of the blood vessels. So my dad had cerebral vascular disease for about 8 years before he passed. He had 27 cerebral strokes. They're not the type of strokes that most people think about with strokes, where you get asymmetry, paralysis. They're deep in the inner cerebrum. And his blood vessels there had almost become like tissue paper. So anytime he'd be startled or he'd be sleeping, he'd wake up suddenly, he could have these little mini strokes. And they weren't TIAs, they weren't transient ischemic attacks, which is a mini stroke. They were actually strokes, just small scale strokes. And what it did was it exacerbated his dementia. And he just had traditional age-related dementia that, again, chronologically, Dick Gregory was 84 when he passed. Biologically, on a cellular level, the man was a good 110. There was a lot of miles on that body, a lot of wear and tear, a lot of experimentation on his own body. So again, not everything natural is good for you. And so he was on the front line and wanting to make things better for his people, and he was willing to take those blows. And even still with that, he didn't just live to be 84, he thrived to be 84. He had 10 shows lined up. He had 10 shows lined up the week that we lost him. And normally, when someone's in the hospital and it's kind of the end of the road for him, it's sad and it's down. But we didn't know it because at the time, the tear that was in his aorta. So you have the heart here, you have the largest vessel in the human body that comes out of it, like my thumb coming up, his aorta, where that tear was, it was evading the imaging. Medical diagnostic imaging is good, it's not perfect. So what looked like a shadow was actually fluid pooling. After the fact, we realized that. And we know our bodies if we're in tune. The entire time we were in the hospital, Pop kept pulling me in and whispering in my ear. And I don't know what the language rating is on your broadcast here, so I'll keep it PG. But he was whispering in my ear and saying, these beeps got it wrong. I'm telling you, he said, I'm telling you, it is not at all what they think it is, doctor. He was like, this is much bigger than they realize. And I kept saying, okay, and a lot of older folks, as they get older, they talk like that. But, mostly Dick Gregory, the entertainer, the lecturer, it's real, but it's a persona. That's okay. It's showtime. It's time to go deliver. That's not the person that I engage with every day. That's not the person that, I knew that person. I mean, I almost used to explain to people, it was like, I had a multi-personality relationship with my dad. So it's one person that I recognize as dad. It was one person I recognize as Dick Gregory. And it was one person that I recognize as Richard Gregory. And Richard Gregory was very human. I mean, he had the same fears that the rest of us have, the same understanding that I won't be here forever. Richard Gregory had a very, very painfully tragic childhood. And as Miss Cicely Tyson would always say to me, she would say, once an adult, twice a child. And that's very real. All of us will have a second childhood. And I was determined. I mean, Ron, I can't even tell you the level of determination for my dad's second childhood to be profoundly better than his first. Because I mean, that's what he provided for us Gregory children. I mean, we were almost choking on silver spoons. I mean, it was, and not that he intended it to be, it was just the love that the community had for, brother Dick and then his 10 children. So he changed the DNA in his lifetime. It was a quantum leap. When I go back and read my dad's book, Nigger, and hear folks talking about, and hear my dad talking about, and hear my grandmother, his mother, talking about, well, I just hope that one of these Gregory's, meaning the siblings, her children, could make it off of North Taylor Street. Wow. I mean, Pops might as well be on the moon compared to how far he is away from North Taylor Street. So, I mean, he shook things up. He changed the world, and he did it by being fearless and honest and, willing to sacrifice, mind, body, spirit, and treasure for his people. You mentioned Rosa Parks a moment ago, and I'm not a finger waver. I think that we're all too intelligent for that. At least we should be if we use our God-given universal intelligence. I'm not a finger waver, but there's too many folks in our community that we acknowledge as treasures, but we don't protect them as treasures. And so Rosa Parks, the last, I think it was 18, 20 years of her life, her rent was being paid by the white billionaire in Detroit who owns Little Caesars or Little Caesars, I believe. So, kudos to him. I'm very appreciative for that. But we as a Black community have to take better care of our own. We have the financial resources to do that. Absolutely, we do. If we can prop up the Nikes of the world and the Mercedes of the world, we can take care of our own. Because what happens if these folks weren't there? It's profoundly important. Before my dad passed, this was about in 2015, a young South African brother reached out to me, artist. He had designed these beautiful, the Dick Gregory shirts you see that say, and say, it's a game.
Right.
He designed the shirts. He sent them to me. And I said, yeah, absolutely, brother. I'll give you, I showed them to my dad. He loved them. It's like anything we can do to help someone out. So every once in a while, my dad's social media, I would repost what the brother's doing. And it would say, and there's always a comment, from a brother or a sister asking, oh, well, what's the cause? What's the purpose of this? What's the, is there some, and I would just say, just a beautiful shirt supporting, brother Dick. You can support someone not financially. You're supporting the brother who designed it. He's the artist that designed it, but you're keeping the legacy alive by forwarding and advancing the narratives that Dick Gregory stood for by wearing his image. And images are important. As the executor of my dad's estate, I'm very guarded about the images and the stories that are told and who tells those stories, because to me, it's profoundly important to not allow folks to rewrite history. And so I saw a moment ago, you put up the link for the Tribeca Film Festival. So June 19th, at the 20th anniversary of Tribeca Film Festival, we'll be premiering the one and only Dick Gregory. It's just a phenomenal documentary. I mean, I get goosebumps every time I talk about it, because we started filming this 3 years before my dad passed. So it's 6 years in the making. And, Dick Gregory, his entire life, since probably the age of 21, was talking and somebody was recording it. So we had 1,500 hours of archival footage. So the young filmmaker, young Black brother, Andre Gaines, reached out to my dad. My dad gave him the usual hazing. So Andre took all the blows that he needed to take to prove his worth. So he took the hazing like a champ. He hung in there. And now 6 years later, it's just a beautiful, it's an incredible documentary. So the documentary it'll premiere on June 19th, and then it'll come out on the 4th of July on a premium cable network. The only reason I'm not saying the name of the network is because I don't want to get out in front of their announcement. So within the next week or two, they'll be making their announcement. But on July, the 4th of July, so both of the holidays, Brother Dick got locked up. We got Juneteenth locked up, which is also Father's Day weekend, for the first worldwide premiere. Even though most of the folks in the world won't be able to see it then, they'll at least hear folks, most of the folks at the film festival are press, so they'll hear folks writing about it and talking about it. And then on the 4th of July, they'll be able to all see it or stream it into their homes all over the world. So it'll be available all over the world. My dad has a massive following in Japan, in Croatia, in Indonesia. So if we swap the screen back for a moment, I want to hold this up. And so this is the Japanese version of Nigger. It came out 3 weeks ago, and I don't know about you, I can't read Japanese, so I gotta assume that they didn't change anything, and I'm going to get in real close on this here. So that little symbol there above my finger, so the first little equal sign is pronounced ni, and the little symbol next to it is gar, which makes Nigar. And the white cat explained that to me. I said, you explained that a little too comfortably, my friend. I said, the fact that you know how to say Nigar in Japanese is a bit of a problem. I said, I'm going to make sure my people know. So if any of you are in Japan and you see that written on your receipt when you're going out to eat, you know that there's a problem. So it's
well, you think about the climate of the times right now in this country that's talking about this so-called anti-Asian hate, and that Black people are the people that's doing it, which I found strange. You talking about Dick Gregory,
which is bullshit, man. Which is bullshit. It's the press. It's the press, and I almost sound like clowns that used to be in the White House, but it really who maligned us, who we were the face. So something starts happening. Then the news. I was in Atlanta when quote unquote carjacking was given a term. People have been robbing cars forever, but when carjacking, so now you're carjacked. And then it just became the thing. It was during the crack epidemic. So then everywhere you went, it was like, oh, a carjacking. And then Black folks became the face of carjacking. Right. And then, if for weak-minded folks, oh, this is what we're doing now. We're carjacking. Then they go, so that's what they are. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy on that. Sure, we've had, and you go into our community, there's so many, Korean stores and Asian stores. It's always been banter back and forth. And so the fact that now when and a lot of it is like, you know, mentally ill folks, you can look at a lot of these attacks and some of them are very vicious. And so, but as a Black man, I just can't sit here and lend tremendous amount of my, bandwidth to, hey, of course, stop all hate, stop all hate, stop all violence. But there's been too much violence perpetuated on us for me to like hard stop and focus solely on it. So yes, it's a problem. It needs to be addressed. It's a problem that's being exacerbated definitively by the stories. And so, like most of these things, they'll somewhat run their course. And so, but you see this all the time. Oh, we're snatching purses now. Oh, this is what we're doing now. And then the weak-minded folks go out there and start doing it because you're almost giving them a blueprint in the reporting of it, of how to go about doing it. And like, oh, this is what they, there's a lot of weak folks in all communities, but very few weak folks are constantly spoon-fed the misinformation that our community has served. Most of these people, Indians, Asians, all over the world come to this country because they believe America's the land of milk and honey, the land of opportunity. Well, the milk and honey is Black folks. We're the milk and honey. We're all the money. Right. We're the ones that took, and I don't knock them. Because we could do the stores, we could do it. We just have to support ourselves, and not because, only support Black businesses, earn that money, but at least give us an honest shot. And so I'm not, I just almost don't want to put too much time and energy into even discussing the Asian hate piece, other than saying it needs to stop. And while we're at it, it all needs to stop. And so, so we shouldn't just put this stuff into buckets and only look at certain buckets at a time. So no, there's a tremendous amount of love for Dick Gregory in Japan. Japan has tremendous racial issues. A lot of these Asian countries have tremendous, America isn't the only chip in the racism cookie for certain. So hopefully, I'm happy that folks are reading nigger in Japan, and soon in Indonesia, and soon in Croatia. It's a alarm bell in a sense, telling folks to wake up and understand what's going on. But my dad had 16 books. Nigger's only one of them. We're bringing them all back. Wow. So we're bringing back Dick Gregory's Natural Diet for Folks Who Eat, Cooking with Mother Nature, and so that comes out on June 8th. All of my dad's books are available on Amazon's Audible. And so it just is, it's an exciting time. With the Caribbean, the Bahamian diet is now the Caribbean
always ask me about that. They always ask me about that.
It's all in the documentary. The documentary breaks it all down. My dad's new energy drink, 3E, is now available. And so many folks who I've advanced it to, because we haven't rolled it out on a large level yet, are just amazed at the ingredients. And so these were formulations that my dad was working on for some time. He always wanted to find a clean delivery system to get nutrients into the body on a cellular level. 3E does, it's really more of a multivitamin disguised as an energy drink. It does not use, most caffeine comes from adult coffee beans that get heated or roasted. And when you do that, you change the pH of coffee and you make it acidic, which is one of the things that changes the body's alkalinity, because the coffee is now acidic. So we use young green coffee beans, and we use cold extraction to extract the caffeine. So the bean is never heated. The amount of folks who have drank this, like real energy drinkers, and have just the reviews on it are just incredible. Right now, Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes are filming a new miniseries for Netflix. And so Wesley Snipes has been a partner with the estate for a long time. So we've flooded, since at this point, many of the Starbucks had been closed. They've since started reopening in LA, but we flooded the set with more 3E than they could imagine. And so everyone's on the set. I don't want to say the word addicted. I'm not addicted to water. I like the way my body feels when I drink it. And so, we give a lot of these things, a bad name because people have taken caffeine and did bad things with it. So, they put a ton of, you look at like a Red Bull or something like that, there's a disproportionate amount of high fructose corn syrup, which, to the Black folks out here, our community, We are dying from diabetes. And the biggest driver of diabetes, it's not the piece of cake you're eating, it's not the pie, it's not the cookie, it's the high fructose corn syrup in it. If you simply ate it without that, you would see the numbers of diabetics in our community go down dramatically.
But who approved that, Dr. Christian? Who the ones, is the FDA approving that though? I mean, why are they putting that in our food?
I mean, and now we see our food, but Trump drank more high fructose corn syrup than anyone I know. So this isn't, this is fun. The new niggers are poor people. And so this is an attack on poor people who don't have access to information, access to clean food. These beverages are are highly addictive. I mean, sugar is the cocaine of the food industry. I mean, it's highly addictive. It's not. And high fructose corn syrup, they don't do it because it saves them money. They do it because it's more addictive. So you go to the store and say, hey, get one Kit Kat bar for 50 cents or 20 of them for $1. You see the strategy is to get you hooked, and the super goal. You look at these folks and it's like, listen, you've never seen a dog, cat, horse drink that much of a beverage. They drink water, but the human body needs water. And we're drinking all these other aids, lemonade, Kool-Aid, Gatorade, and the body's saying, yeah, that's cool, but I need water. And that's why we're drinking so much of it. So a lot of it is just, it's Madison Avenue. It's greed. Again, industry. So racism is an industry. The snack food industry. These are billion and trillion dollar global brands that don't care nothing about me and you. I have a brother that called me this morning, and like we still kick it. Most of the folks who were close to my dad, I'm still in touch with virtually all of them. As you know, I'm super accessible despite the insane amount of things on my plate. Right. I think it's important to stay rooted with my people. And make sure, good information goes out. As my dad always says, information is power, but good information, because not all power is good. A forest fire is powerful. So information is power, but good information is good power. And nowadays we went from a time prior to the World Wide Web where, people were going and looking at encyclopedias to get their info. Well, by the time we printed it, it's 10 years old. That's no longer news. That's old. And so now we get things real time. So we went from getting too little information to now being beat over the head with so many volumes of information. You can never get through it. So you have to learn to have folks around you that you trust, and everyone does their job deciphering the information and sharing it and disseminating it back to our people. But all of these are industries. Racism is an industry. We saw that. We saw that on the attack on Capitol Hill. Man, I can remember as young as 8 traveling, my mom and dad and all those little Gregorys behind them like little ducklings going down. I can vividly, the first time I was arrested in my life, I was 8 years old in Reedsville, Louisiana. Wow. Shout out to the folks at Reedsville, but typically when I say something with a long vowel, it's because it wasn't a place I was wild about. So in Reedsville, and part of it is I haven't been back since then, but it was the first place I was arrested. I was 8 years old and doing nothing but marching and protesting. All 10 of us, well, I think it's 8 of the Gregorys there, because I think I was the youngest, so my little brother and sister weren't there. They came, they put little zip ties on my little 8-year-old wrist, led me into a bus. It was hot as hell, no air. Bus wasn't even running. The windows were up. I just remember how hot it was, and I remember the gnats, and I was 8. And so now I see the attack, the 9/11 style attack on the U.S. Capitol. And I see folks that look like my math and science teacher since I was in elementary school, waltz right into the Capitol and like whoop ass, destroy the place, defecate, piss, and, tag it with graffiti signs and walk right out without a single one of them being arrested. And not that I needed to see that to know the duality of rules in America, but it just screamed, there's 2 different systems. And that doesn't mean to give up. That doesn't mean to attack it. It means to keep working to change the system. It's profoundly better. When I hear, young folks, it's profoundly better than what it was. It's a shame it's not better than where we currently are, but the momentum is we've seen the tragic assassination of George Floyd. We've seen that in our community before. That wasn't there's been live streaming of brothers or sisters being killed by the police that have been on the internet before live. And so that wasn't the first time, but it's the first time all of us slowed down enough because we were in a pandemic. We were stuck in the house. We were tired of hearing about Trump. And now we just all were stuck on this horrifying 9+ minute slow assassination of this Black man for doing nothing, for passing, if that was even the case, we're potentially passing a fake $20 bill. It's a shame that it took the world slowing down. It took a pandemic. There's been lots of silver linings from this pandemic, for certain. It's a shame that it took a pandemic for the world to feel enough shame about how Black folks and marginalized folks in this country, the mightiest nation in the land, have been being treated for some time. When I hear folks talk about, cancel culture, cancel, like, what is that? What are you talking about? The original cancel culture was, lynching a 14-year-old for whistling. You can't cancel someone more than lynching and killing them. I mean, so you can't have the creators, the cancer cultureologists sit and now say, grandma lost her job because she said nigger, they're canceling. You're not going to get any sympathy from me for that. So my dad would frequently talk about the pendulum of racial injustice. So at one point it was swung. We had Jim Crow, we had this, and now we're over the other side, and we have grandma or grandpa losing their job because they say, Negro or whatever they say that's no longer acceptable. And they say, they didn't mean it. How many folks were hanging from trees that not only didn't mean it, didn't do it? So I'm not spending any time to say, I feel bad for that person who was canceled. The canceled you're still breathing. So go on and do something else, move on, keep it moving, kick rocks. I don't want to hear anything. Now, hopefully, if we allow things to recalibrate properly, when that pendulum comes back, we'll be at something that's wrong. I don't hope our children and grandchildren are still discussing the things that we're discussing. I do think that there's a very real possibility of a post-racist world, but it's not some, you and I have too much baggage to even live in that world because, it's, we and it's not our fault, we were beat over the head by this baggage. So, it's the young folks. My dad always put a lot of energy on the young folks, so you have a white household, you have the grandparents, upstairs might be in their Klan hoods. You got the parents in the, on the first floor, and they may not, but, I don't have time for it. But then you have the grandchildren downstairs dancing to Beyonce and Jay-Z and obsessed with them. This thing's changing, and it's going to be slow. But the problem is, if we only look at that, we don't see the marginalization of poor people, these middle class jobs that they're not just, it's not Black or brown people. That has nothing to do with the border. It's technology. How many jobs, we used to go to the gas station for someone would come out and walk. I mean, my dad would always call this white folk corporate welfare. Someone would come out, wash the windows, check the tire pressure, check your oil. All these folks had a job, and it wasn't really a job if I can do it myself. And so they were spreading the wealth. Now they've got so selfish and greedy. Now we're not spreading the wealth anymore. We're keeping it, which means, the rich 1% have gotten profoundly richer during this pandemic, and poor folks and middle-class folks have got profoundly poor. And it just is, it's a disservice. And we're looking at everything in black and white and not understanding, the racism piece, but also the classism piece. My dad would always say, if Tiger Woods was out with 4 of his wealthy white golfing buddies and they were walking down the street and the police pulled up and said, "Get on the ground, nigger," all Tiger's white friends would be like, "Tiger, get on the ground. What are you waiting for?" That nigga wake-up call, as Paul Mooney would always say, that nigga wake-up call can hit any of us at any time. And, mentioning Paul's name, I just want to take a moment to give just a heartfelt shout out to the Mooney family, I just can't tell you what Paul meant and means, because when folks die, they don't leave us. What Paul means to me, just what a blessing, man. And he paid a price. He could have conformed, and he could have conformed, and he was wild. I mean, just witty and sharp, and just hilarious, man. I mean, the years that we collectively, Black folks, have got, just from even folks who may not even have liked them, just the good energy those of us who did were putting out in our ether. Oh, he's added, decades to our life, and not only life, because we focus too much on the extending life without extending quality of life. He has added decades to our quality of life, as a people. I mean, there it is, man. There it is. I mean,
in 2014, I met him. It was awesome down in Atlanta. May 2014.
I mean, you can see Paul on the cane then. Paul had I believe it's prostate cancer. Don't quote me on that, because
I heard that
too.
I heard that.
Healthcare provider, but it was some type of cancer, and it was public, but I'm just not certain as I'm speaking on it. But sometimes folks from, and I don't believe he had chemotherapy, I believe he had radiation, but sometimes one of the significant kind of adverse reactions to that is, an exacerbation of dementia. And so, it really profoundly impacted his cognitive skills. And so that was really so he survived the cancer. Part of what we were talking about before, he survived the cancer, but the impact it had on his mind was pretty significant. And so that's why sometimes you'd go see him and he was just a live wire. It was like, oh, Paul. Then sometimes you'd go see him and you'd say, okay, I can see Paul's processing some things. But I mean, that's the life cycle, man. Limelight gets heavy. Limelight gets very heavy. And when these folks get older, I served in many capacities. Miss Cicely Tyson, I was an advisor for, a body man for whenever she came to DC, picked her up, stayed with her till she left. I only reference that to say, these folks are human. Their backs ache, their feet ache, neck pain, all the things that come with just a life of service. And sometimes we don't realize that in our zeal to want to reach out. I mean, I've seen my dad get knocked to the ground by an overzealous fan. Folks can love you to life or they can love you to death. So it's important to have folks around you who love you to life, to provide a bit of a buffer, not to deny access, but to allow folks to respect the fact, if folks go to see Michael Jordan at 84, if they're pissed off because he's not still dunking, something's wrong with them. So when folks would go and see Paul and they would complain afterwards, I say, wait, this is our chance to say thank you and to, allow, we always say, give folks their flowers while they're alive. That $25, $45 ticket, you're going to give these folks and to glimpse and take a peek at real greatness, because it's as my dad would always say, show me my good. You always want to show me my bad, show me my good. So you'll hear the folks, oh, Paul this and Paul that. We always want, and I'll let the other folks deal with that. I know what I knew. I knew the blessings. I knew the gift. We have conversations about, Bill Cosby still being incarcerated, still being locked up. I don't even have a position on the legal aspect because I don't know anything about it. All I know is that you have a man that has so significantly contributed to not just Black folks, to humanity. And if anyone deserved home detention or to be removed during COVID or the fact that they've denied all of those inquiries, it's criminal. And the fact that us as Black, you see here Black folks, oh, he's still where he belongs. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, and again, you have to be real careful. What he's accused of is terrible. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. So, everything's not, you hear people all the time, what's it, red or blue pill? Is it red or blue pill, red or blue pill? Take both. Like, sometimes life is not that complicated. Me and my dad would be out on the front line fighting, and on whatever movement, whatever protest rally, and then go spend the weekend at the Four Seasons Hotel, eating good and getting a massage. You don't have to be on either side of
He was a Libra, though. He was a Libra.
He needed to have that balance, and it was beautiful because he needed to recharge and he earned it. And so, my dad, a lot of people don't know that my dad was a lifelong autophile. I mean, he loved automobiles. So he had a beautiful collection of Rolls Royces out on the farm. And I can remember, we didn't have employees at the farm. These were additional parents. So you couldn't talk to the brother who was driving us. He would tell you, do your homework. He would tell you what to pick up. It wasn't, some, you work for me type stuff. My dad was real clear. And part of the reason, us 10 Gregory children weren't met with some of the confliction that other famous children have dealt with because we were raised as normal folks. I mean, we weren't, I mentioned the silver spoons, but some of those silver spoons would sometimes go upside our head, and it could be from some of the folks who worked for Pops who would hold us accountable. So it was all love, but I can remember a time, both of his Rolls Royces, Big Mike, who was his man, driving one of them, my dad driving the other one, 10, big afro, little black children in Boston, Massachusetts. Both Rolls Royces turn on the hazards, pull to the side of the road. And my dad, Big Mike, and all 10 of us were on the side of the road picking up litter, picking up white folks, I'm sure, because it was Boston, picking up trash for the side of the road. Just in my dad's own way, Grant said, yeah, you're sitting here riding in these fine Rolls Royces, but I want to remind you our debt and obligation of service, not just to each other for humanity, but to the earth. I mean, my dad was an environmentalist, and he spent a lot of time, really, some of the earliest protests I were at was 3 Mile Island after they had their radiation leak. I mean, this was something that, clean water, lead pipes. I mean, these are the things, so many times we focus on the big things impacting us, but then we go home and we embrace the things that are killing us. High fructose corn syrup, high density lipids, all these things that our refrigerator is full of. And we say, oh, well, the man's out here. No, the man's in your house. The man's in your cabinets, in your pantry, in your refrigerator. And you're just, not only are you inviting them in, you're paying for it and bringing it in. So my dad said go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry.
I was at Dr. Christian, are we the ones responsible? We trust these authority figures that have our best interest. They approve of these lipids and high fructose corn syrup in our food and our bowl of cornflakes. Like in Memphis, we got the Kellogg's cornflakes plant right next to the old Army depot, which has been proven to have hazardous chemicals in the ground. That's my old folks' neighborhood. Both my parents, grandparents, my maternal grandparents died from cancer. A lot of folks died from cancer in the neighborhood right by the Army depot that kept hazardous chemicals in the ground. And they still got a Kellogg's plant processing cornflakes over there next to that ground. So is the government really responsible for
I hear you loud and clear. Mm-hmm. And I join you in finger pointing. But, as every finger we point, 3 point back at us. We also have choices to make. Then don't eat the damn cornflakes. I don't. Again, that information is power. Good information is good power. Bad information is bad power. I know folks for a fact. I could share with them what you just shared here, and they would still go eat the damn cornflakes. What is a cornflake anyway? You could put a cornflake in front of a dog. It's not eating it unless it's a domesticated dog that you've been feeding this garbage and it's addicted to it like we are. Right. So we have to go back to the foundation of what is food. And most of what we consume, food by definition is required to be nutritious. Most of it is not nutritious, so it is not food. It's just shit you're eating. And so when you realize that, and so, most of the reason I move all over the country, as you know. So primarily, my dad and I spent a lot of time at Whole Foods, not because we represent and stood for everything they stood for. When we could find a mom and pop, especially in the hood, but when we could find a mom or pop health food. So it's still, you still gotta know the source. You still have to know where it's coming from. So when we could find and we travel to the same places a lot. Dr. Alvina Fulton, who owns Fultonia, so that's who hit my dad. I mean, the whole motivation behind Dick Gregory's diet, cooking with Mother Nature, was like, hey, we got to start growing your own food. A lot of us have a lot of free time, man. You and I may not. But there's a lot of folks in our community that has a tremendous amount of free time.
They're getting them Biden checks right now while they still can.
Yeah, I mean, and
I see a lot of hiring signs around here.
Yeah, and we should be getting them because corporate welfare, white folks have been getting corporate welfare for so long. You're not going to make keep those checks coming. And so when you hear folks talk about reparations and all, and the only reason I'm not in the reparation fight because I don't trust the system. That money will be diverted from something else that was already coming to us. So I don't trust the system. B, it's reparations for what? So we're only looking at slavery. Well, what about Jim Crow? What about redlining? What about the things we're dealing with? There was just a sister the other day that said she had an appraisal done at her home and it came in at 180. She thought that was low. So she she called the same company for a second appraisal, but asked her white girlfriend to have her white husband come and pretend he was the homeowner. Man, I kid you not, you can look this up. The appraisal jumped back to $280,000 and went from 120 to 280. This stuff is still real, man. I mean, part of the reason I love and live in DC, because if you get an appraisal, most likely it's going to be someone that looks like me and you. I'm a real estate investor, and I've been in probably 20 settlements. In every settlement in DC, the majority of the folks in there look like you and me, because that's the makeup of DC. And so part of the reason that kept us Gregory's here was just not that looking over our shoulder, like, if you didn't get the loan, brother, you didn't get it because you didn't qualify. It didn't have nothing to do with the color of your skin. So it was, Black loan officers, Black loan, presidents, Black bank presidents. So we all can do better. And I think we need to hold folks accountable, but the best way to hold folks accountable is to first fix us. Then we can hold folks accountable, live long enough and thrive. We can't have you, rolling around on look how many folks in our community are on electric scooters and, toes gone, ankles gone, foot. Every time you see them, a little more has been, and you say, oh, that's addiction, man. That's what that is. If I tell you that your sugar consumption and carbohydrate consumption is what's leading to this, and you're losing your foot and toe and legs and you still can't stop, that's addiction. And again, sugar is the cocaine of the food industry. And that's not, when you look at people, I remember when people were wilding out about McDonald's McNuggets and how unhealthy they were, not realizing the dipping sauce was 10 times more unhealthy than the nugget. And so we get distracted, man. When you read the label of the dipping sauces, there's not a single dipping sauce that anyone that respects their body could eat. And so right now, we talk about Black folks, but you fly in any of America's airlines right now, pick the airline, go. Every single beverage that's an option for you has high fructose corn syrup in it. Every single one. I mean, and then most of the water is not real water. It's Dasani or all these other brands.
I can taste it.
And so,
it's horrible.
So you are now stuck in the plane. You're stuck in the plane with nothing to consume. So you have to go and buy your own water in there because you can't bring it in with you. So now you have to go and buy, which I always do, because there's literally nothing on the plane that, my own mental health, I still enjoy and consume adult fermented beverages. So that's about the only thing I can ever get on a flight. And I don't mix it with anything, because everything on there to mix it with, I don't drink. And so the high fructose corn syrup, I was going to write a book once just called Sauces, Death by 1,000 Sauces, barbecue sauce, mambo. So if you look at what's in it, that is killing us quicker than what you're putting it on. But we'll talk about the pork chop without talking about what we're putting on it. And nothing deserves a pass. We need to talk about the totality of what we put into our body. I mean, soda pop. I mean, soda, man. I mean, it's just, us, although I was raised in Massachusetts, all of my family's from the Midwest. So we still say things like Washington, washing machine, and soda pop. So you look at folks drinking soda and you just say, wow, I just shake my head every time I see it, because I'm like, there's someone who has made an executive decision not to care about finding good information, or they know the good information and yet they still choose not to. And the low calorie stuff is even worse. It has even more. I mean, so these Frankenstein laboratory ingredients, I mean, then we wonder, what's fueling the cancer growth. I mentioned my dad's PET scans earlier, and how a PET scan works. They take a sucrose, a sugar, a liquid, and they radiate it so it glows, and then they inject that into your body. And so as the sugar, the first thing in your body that sugar goes to is cancer. So as it goes to where the cancer is, it makes it light up like a Christmas tree. I mean, literally, you don't even have to be a doctor to read a PET scan. You can say, that ain't right, that's not right. It's that black and white, and how clear, where there is some type of metastasis in your body. You and I, we've been speaking here, your body and my body has developed cancer cells. Cancer cells are part of life, all of our bodies. Since we've been talking, you've created hundreds of cancer cells since we've been chatting. Your immune system doing what it's designed to do, is saying, hey, that one's cancer, that one's cancer. All cancer is a cell that doesn't belong. So if you have prostate cancer and it spreads to other parts of your body, it's cells that don't belong in that area. And so we inject you with glucose because the first thing the glucose is going to go to, the first thing that's going to eat the glucose in your body is cancer. So all you're doing is feeding this soda pop and everything else. You're feeding the cancer, but you don't have the ability, because it's like going up to a junkie and saying, hey, stop using heroin. You don't understand the psychology of addiction and what that means on a folks have thrown their children out the window to get a fix. So I mean, this stuff is not natural. And so these additives, me and my dad would play games. We would go to the supermarket and just look at the new flavor of chips coming out. And it's wild, man. I mean, it's, you name it, scientists can create it. And that doesn't, I'm just going to plug my laptop in. Scientists can create it. And that doesn't mean that, it's good for you. And so you mentioned a moment ago, the things they're providing for us. So here's a perfect example. I was being interviewed by Brother Nick Cannon for his upcoming Dr. Sebi documentary. And I said, and a lot of people on the set were surprised by this. And at that point, this was pre-COVID, and I was traveling all over the world, primarily, getting picked up by Ubers and Lyfts. And I mentioned, I said, I can tell how sickly my drivers were by how many air fresheners were hanging in the car. Air fresheners are cancer. We don't realize that. This is a chemical that we put in our car to off gas. And that's what, smells good. New cars smell. That's synthetic materials off gassing. That's what the new car smell is. But we've trained our, you want fresh air, put the window down. You want fresh air, use some citrus products to clean the mats, clean the car. So if I see another brother picking me up or sister with 50 vanilla aromas hanging on, it's like, yeah, and that's us. It's not like they only sell, air fresheners to Black folks. That's all because we don't understand what we put in our body is not just what we eat, it's what we spray in the air. Ooh, it smells bad in here. It smells like onion. And we spray all kind of chemicals in a can to make it, well, that's your cancer, folks. Like, this is where this stuff, what did you think? There's just we put citrus in a can. No, that's chemicals. And it lingers and we breathe it. Smells fresh. No, open the window. That's how you get fresh air. It doesn't come in a can. And so we look outside to show and hold folks accountable, but there's so much that we can do. There's so much that we can do to protect ourselves. And again, bad information is bad power. And we can't, I'm not saying don't use that. I know it was always so overwhelming to me, the smells in these. I mean, you go and get your car washed, you see folks putting money in the machine to spray all kinds. What is that? Do you ever stop and say, what is that? What at this filler station next to petroleum? What? So you just, Brother Ron just came back from protesting cornflakes and then stopped and washed his car and sprayed all kind of shit inside, talking about them damn cornflakes. Like, you have to look at it. It's so complicated, but
it's
simple
crazy,
at the same time.
Yeah, you're scaring people, Dr. Christian. You're scaring people right now.
Good. I mean,
I got air fresheners in my car right now.
I already know, Ron, you're a Black man. I know you got air fresheners in your car. I'm probably the only Black man that doesn't. I drive an electric car. I don't have air fresheners. If someone says it stinks, I said, put the window down. It's like someone passed gas. It's supposed to stink. Like, what is stink? What smell bad? Like, certain things are something smells bad to tell you not to eat it, not to do it, or to explain to you what just happened. We're not in tune with our bodies. And so as a result of that, bad things happen, man. There's cancers right now that there is so much plastic in our body right now. So I had a brother call me earlier. That's what I was going to say. He's like, hey, Doc, I'm fasting. And I heard your dad talk about, not fasting using alkaline water, but using distilled water. And that, there's folks who can spend so much time on the type of water. Just drink clean water. And here's the thing. If you're getting your water in a jug that's cloudy, that it's not perfectly clear and cloudy, plastic, like milk jugs, that means that jug is plastic that's only sealed on one side. That means the inside, if you cut it open, you can feel the little ridges. So it's not sealed plastic on both sides. That means anything you put in that bottle, the plastic leaches right into it and you're drinking plastic. So I have folks sitting, I'm in the gym, folks got those big gallon jugs and I'm like,
you talk about me now.
You are, well, I mean, hey, Ron, occasionally I hear you say some things that make me think you might have a disproportionate amount of plastic running through your veins, brother. The truth is, man, it's so, and you can lead a horse to water, but can't force it to drink. I just can't keep running up to folks and say, hey, brother, you shouldn't because my little bit of good information is dwarfed by all of the misinformation that folks are being force fed. So we have to do the work. We have to. So what do? I have a great filtration system in my home. And many of these new refrigerators, they come with great filtration systems. It's like, get the systems to test your water. If you were to test that water, you would be so alarmed. And so it sits in those plastic jugs that we were discussing, and then it's stored in hot warehouses. It's stored in hot trucks. So now it's damn near boiling like tea, and just it's plastic tea. And folks are drinking it, and they're worried about, is it distilled? Is it alkalized? Is it water? That's the first thing. Is it water? Because bad water typically does not taste bad. But plastic and water, you can't taste lead, but you can taste plastic. And so once you get in tune with your body, I used to be upset with how sensitive my body was, because I was like, damn, I want a road trip. I want to eat with other folks. Even the healthiest of folks I know occasionally have a Big Mac attack. And so I want to be able to be on it. And the way my body would, the dizziness I would get, additives. So I realized I'm allergic to additives, and that's a blessing, because it's almost like a drug sniffing dog. My body alerts me. And so high fructose corn syrup makes me dizzy. And a lot of people say, well, they wanted to put me on medication. So why would you put me on why would you put me on medication for something that's saving my life? And so we have to become in tune with our body, and we have to listen to the things our bodies are telling us. Too many times some things are just common sense. Common sense stopped being good sense a long time ago. So we have to start encouraging good sense and make good sense common again, and then apply it. The amount of folks I know that do great programs like what you do, Brother Ron, they do great. Then they go out and then they, contribute to doing the things that are killing us. The thires that are absolutely, killing the folks, and not just our community, but all communities. I mean, most house fires, people die from the off-gassing of toxic smoke in their home. If you had all organic things, still smoke is smoke, but not all smoke is toxic. It's smoke and it's harmful to the human body. But folks smoke weed, folks smoke cigarettes. So so it's not so toxic that you fall to the ground. I mean, folks burn incense, and that's the other thing.
Bring it. I'm glad you bring up everything.
Not that I'm being hard on my people, but I love my people. So we get on, in DC, I ride the metro system around, and we get on the train, and in DC, I don't know where else. When I was in college, we used to call it Muslim oil. I don't know how it got the name, but Muslim oil. Blue Nile, Crush, Rain, all these fragrances that then the brother's walking through the train, smelling that smell good. Before he even gets damn near into the car, you can smell the fragrances get on the car before he does. And so again, fragrances cover things up. Many times I want to smell clean. Well, that's washing, and not just washing with, unhealthy soap and water, but with natural and healthy soap and water. So then you say, well, what's in that? What are the ingredients? Where was it made? What oversight was it? You have to be more aware and dialed into what you're putting on your body or in your body. And so, I got a lot of folks in my family. I love them to life. They're head to toe mud cloth, and they just there's sage in the home. They're
you're hitting close to home with this one, man.
And some of these folks would, I got special seats in my home that I only allow them to sit on. They don't know. They're going to find out if they're watching your program, because if they sit on anything upholstered, 2 weeks after they left, I'm still smelling them like they're sitting right next to me. And
Wow.
anything that smells that long is not, an orange doesn't smell like an orange for 3 weeks, so anything that smells that long typically is not, it's perfumed, it's not good for you. And even if it is natural, not everything natural is good for you. So I had this, a friend of a friend who, uses an excessive amount of what I'll call Muslim oil, smell good. This brother he didn't even sit down, man. I mean, the shit got in the drywall, I guess. For a month, I walked by where he was standing and smelled that fragrance. And so we have to start thinking about, and I share so many of my dad's stories because, this is how we used to kick it all day long, that we would just kick it and go back and forth and push each other's minds. And so he'd say, you got these two cats that hate each other. Businessmen, they're wearing suits, they're wearing whatever. So one of them comes out of a meeting. As he comes out of the office, he's mad. So he picks up dog shit and throws it on the other cat and runs off. So the cat's pissed off. So he says, I'm going to pick up dog shit and I'm going to put it in my pocket till I see this cat again. Well, 3 weeks go by. Whose suits are worn from constantly having dog shit in the pocket? Whose family had to smell dog shit? Whose friends had to smell dog shit? Also, you could get a nanosecond of an opportunity to throw something on someone they can rinse right off. So we have to think about the things we're latching onto and holding on to. Many of them can be so toxic. My dad would always say, when Black folks first make it, they got to spend about $1 million on treats just to get their mind right. And I understood what he meant. We have to undo what's been done. And everything that's been done, has not been outside in. A lot of it's been inside out. It's been us. And so a lot of the information that, a lot of the food and information that, and we could say, oh, well, it's because they gave us bad food as slaves. So they gave Dick Gregory's genealogy bad food as slaves, and he switched it. He didn't switch it because he was a millionaire. He switched it because he was curious of how he could do better. He was tired of seeing so many folks in his community dying prematurely. So he wanted to know how he could do better. And as a result of doing better, he stumbled on some things. He stumbled on some things that were profoundly important. And so we need to stop, breathe, be thankful, because we live in a country of abundance. And there was a day you could look at someone and say, oh, that person is not well off. That person's well off. Now everyone's got a strong life within reason. We can find outliers, but within reason, everyone has a strong Wi-Fi signal. Everyone's got it may not be the latest phone, but it does the same Google search as everyone else's phone. We're all plugged in. And as a result of that, we should expect more from each other. We should do our own research and not just wait for someone to come along. And when someone does come along and plant seeds, you take it and pay that forward. This isn't, sometimes we use sickness and disease in our community. And a lot of what I talk about, it's not just Black folks, but, that's what my passion is. So I'm talking to Black folks. But we see this across the board as almost like, oh, you're sick, I'm not. And that's wrong. We need to all learn how to heal each other and do better and share this information, not from a top down heavy. Even as a healthcare provider, I never finger waved. I sat and had intelligent and for 30 years, man, sometimes over 50 patients a day, just having intelligent conversations to allow people their self to have that aha moment. And a lot of folks will walk out, even as intelligent as you are, I'm not certain you're going to go and remove all those air fresheners. It's like some of the stuff, and then if you do, the rest of the family might not have. So there's real work that needs to be done, and it's not mutually exclusive. Do it for protecting the community outside in, but also inside out. And the joy of helping other folks to not just feel better, but to thrive and amplify their vibration and frequency. You know this from doing the type of programming you're doing. It's profound. I mean, it's absolutely profound. So, I always just say thank you, man. Like you're out there on the front line, but you don't do it even as I'm seeing the Cash App going by, I know your heart, man. You do pay money to do this. All the times you would fly and come and meet me and my dad where we were at, you weren't on our dime, and the service you're providing for Dick Gregory's legacy is, folks like you are keeping it alive. I mean, folks like you, brother Mike over at Real Black, it's folks who have kept the legacy alive by keeping the information flowing. And, and I'm doing it as the caretaker of the estate, but I can't do it all. We need folks to, so people ask all the time, hey, what can we do? Buy his books, buy his records, the ones that the estate owns or has authorized, not the folks. And sure, go get my rule for engagement. If someone has an operation that's $10,000 a year or less, making Dick Gregory something, do you? I'm looking, if Nike comes up with a Dick Gregory shirt, pay the Gregory estate. So I love, at my dad's funeral, I think I saw 50 cats selling Dick Gregory buttons and pins. That was a compliment. That was a blessing. I wasn't running around inspecting copyright. I was saying, what a blessing. Now, again, if I go to the downtown, the Marriott, and in their gift shop, they're selling, I'm going to inquire. So we have to be wise about what's just respect and what's someone, exploiting. So definitely. And, you didn't ask me to sit here and plug anything, but honestly, people want to know, they want to know where they could buy where are the best places. If you got a official website or something that people could buy the books and the other thing. I want to know the energy drink. I mean, I love to get some of that. So 1 sec. I want to give all of that. And then what I was just saying a moment ago, even a platform like yours, part of the reason I've never, even during the time when, there was always someone that had a bootleg, I've never bought, I don't drink bootleg whiskey. I don't watch bootleg DVDs. I don't want bootleg books, because if you like something, cast a vote for it with your dollar by supporting it. And by doing that, you keep it around. None of these things are kind of self-fulfilling. And that's the reason I always tell people the importance. Hey, you sit and you're watching the program, you pay for the cable in your home, so you're paying them for it. Pay for the free information that you're getting. And so, and like my dad would always say, pay for it the same way you pay for them Nikes. And so it's important that we slow down and we show respect. And the reason I feel so strongly about all of the things we're doing with my dad's estate, it's not for financial reasons. It keeps the information out there. The reason my dad has 16 books and 12 albums is when he made an executive decision to walk away from comedy and no longer perform in nightclubs and venues that allowed smoking and alcohol, and pivoted to only lecturing, really performing, because his lectures were funny as hell, but they were informative, at colleges and universities. He took about a 90% pay cut. And so to offset that, he started writing copious amounts of books and recording albums as a way to supplement his income. Now, the beautiful thing, now that it's not beautiful that we lost him, now that we lost him, the beautiful thing, the silver lining, is we have all of that intellectual property. And it's important as a community. I've become somewhat of an intellectual property expert in the last 3 years. As a community, we spend too much attention on tangible, physical things, physical property. But yet we spend all our time on our devices creating intellectual property. Every text message you ever wrote, every email you ever wrote, that is your intellectual property. You must have a will. Make sure in your will you acknowledge who your executor, who you trust for this to go to. Ron, you could slip out here today, be hit by a car. You could have 5 books worth of information just in your devices. But if you don't acknowledge your intellectual property in your will and who you want to deed that to, who you want to be responsible for that. There is a white woman that sued Apple, and she spent probably close to $100,000. One of the other reasons, she's white, suing Apple just to have the luxury to spend $100,000, knowing that you can't outbeat these folks, for her husband's passcode to his phone, because he had passed. 6 million people die every day. At some point, we're checking out, and we shouldn't, and we're not always going to have weeks to know we're dying. Sometimes it's instantaneous. So who are you entrusting your brain to? Because we dump our brains into these devices now. So if later someone realizes, hey, well, this brother is the reincarnation of Jesus Christ,
right.
Well, all this this brother got 20 Bibles worth of information in his phone. Who owns it? And so to understand, Ellen was hosting one of the big shows. I don't know, Grammys, Oscars, one of them, and it was sponsored by Motorola. So whatever it was, she had the new phone, and so she jumped into the audience. It was like a who's who of A-listers, and she wants to take a selfie, but her arm's not long enough, so she passes the phone to Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper on Ellen's phone, probably in hers.
Yeah.
I think it may have been the Oscars, as my dad would say, white folks award show. Took a picture. And it was, so when the picture became famous, it was, okay, invaluable. Who owns this picture? And the answer is simple: Bradley Cooper. He's the artist. If I take your paintbrush and paint something, we don't care it's your brush. That's not art. That's some shit you could buy. He took her paintbrush and snapped and perfectly framed that picture. So he owns that intellectual property in perpetuity. It's his. He could sell it to someone else, but he owns that. Now we're hearing folks talk about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and Black folks, it's what we do. We play the lottery, we hear new things. We do. Oh, NFTs. Most people have no earthly idea what an NFT is. Your phone is full of NFT worthy things, but all an NFT, a non-fungible token, is a intangible piece of art, something that's on your phone that doesn't exist in any other realm than a digital realm. So a photo you snapped, a video you took, and then we take a coin, just like just like Bitcoin or any other of these cryptocurrencies. It's crypto because it's encrypted, and then we basically take that art and we assign an equivalent of assigning a social security number to it, which is that crypto connection number. So now it becomes a crypto collectible, and it's assigned a non-fungible token, which means, hey, I like this digital picture, and I can click on it and say, oh, Dr. Christian Gregory owns this. Why? Because his digital token is attached to it. So now let's take the Mona Lisa. There's only one original. Plenty of us have a copy of it. And then we say, oh, well, why would you pay for it if someone can just make a copy of it? Because now that we can prove what the original is, the more copies of it just makes the original that much more valuable. So it's important to understand non-fungible tokens and crypto collectibles, profoundly different from cryptocurrencies, although they are all blockchain. And all blockchain is in its simplest form, it's like a different type of World Wide Web. Every time you turn around, another corporation is being hacked and your information, so if you want something that's not hackable, at least not right now, China's probably getting pretty close to it, but not right now. First quantum computer will probably be able to come up with the algorithms to crack crypto collectibles. So it'll become a chase. Encryption. But for right now, it's not going to be some young brother halfway around the world. I shouldn't say brother, some young cat halfway around the world that's logging into your bank account. Crypto, the encryption process is profoundly complicated and worthy. And so when you hear people losing money in these currencies, it's because they're unregulated. It is not possible, at least not right now, and that could change, for someone to penetrate the encryption of a cryptocurrency or a crypto collectible. Now, a lot of folks are going to be upset because when I say I'm not a cryptocurrency guy, and the reason I'm not, because there's no oversight. It basically has the potential of being a Ponzi scheme, and I've seen it firsthand because I sit on the board of 5 different technology companies, and 2 of them are crypto collectible companies where we're taking many of my dad's famous moments and combining. I've been dealing with NFTs for almost 8 years now, and we're combining them with a non-fungible token. And non-fungible just means you can't penetrate it. 100 years from now, someone can't say, just like when you buy a house, you get a deed. So it's a deed to an intellectual property. So now, hey, I own the deed to this. So if you take pictures and you connect them to an NFT, that means long after you're gone, your children's will keep getting commissions on that artwork because you have something to pass on to them. So it's not as complicated. Most of us use the internet. We don't have to understand how it works. You drive a car, you couldn't build a transmission. Half people don't even understand what it is, but they know you can. So unless it's what you do, don't get caught up on the how. Get caught up on the how can I protect my family's legacy and pass on generational wealth. And crypto products, crypto technology is going to be a major part of that. And so now, where the technology is now, we'll soon be able to take physical things and also assign them an NFT. And that's where the real value is going to be, because it's basically we're taking physical things and giving it a deed of ownership. A major, what's in our minds is profoundly valuable. I mean, it's more valuable than oil and gold. We must protect it. And so the moment Brother Paul Mooney passed, basically I was my dad's body man and caretaker. Big Rudy provided that service for Paul. Rudy called me, the second it happened, 7 a.m. my phone rang twice here in DC. I said, what is Rudy blowing me up? He knows I'm an early riser. And I was just so saddened to hear the news, but I was elated that he passed comfortably. I mean, he said the two, Big Rudy said the two of them were cussing each other out, which they do, like me and my dad, in love, not anger, not fighting. One of the funniest Paul Mooney pieces I ever heard was on the phone with Rudy and Paul, and them niggas cussing each other out over some watermelon. It was the funniest shit. I mean, it was one of those times I wish I could have hit record. I wish I could record that. Wow. Shit that I have ever heard from Paul Mooney. And part of the reason my abs stay tight is laughing to Paul Mooney. And so it was, he went out, as I told Rudy, he went out on his own terms. I mean, life had become hard. He was, he had been struggling a bit. He was very well taken care of. I mean, when people were like, oh, Paul shouldn't still be out doing shows, that's what Paul wanted to do. That was his lifeblood. I'd watch my dad get up on a stage and go from helping him up out of his chair to him running in place on the stage, because once that light hit him, he would reverse age 20 years. He went from 84 to 64 right before your eyes. And then the moment the show was over, you had to hold him again. I mean, you saw. And so that's why when people, oh, Dick Gregory died. Oh, he was so well. They must have did something. They must have stopped giving white folks victories that they didn't do. Dick Gregory lived the life he wanted to live. No one took him out. He went out on his own terms. He was aware of it before anyone else was. He wasn't poked, prodded, cut open. My dad hated needles. That's something that most folks, I told him, I said, Pop, I can't think of one thing I've ever witnessed with you that I wasn't proud of except watching him give blood. And so I said, that was the only time I've ever felt ashamed to be his son, was watching how he shapeshifted when they came at him with a needle. So it was, we all have something. We all have kryptonite. I said, Pa, I take a needle, put it in my arm myself, and does, but we all have, and who knows what his experience with needle, nor knows Black folks didn't get quality medical care when he was growing up, but is to allow folks to go out on their own terms, do a better job insulating and protecting the folks we love. You asked about my dad's, intellectual property. His books and I gotta be careful when I say this, because folks say, oh, it's on Amazon. It's on Amazon. Well, damn, everything is on Amazon. So yes, we should do better. And so there's my wife and I, we were looking for, as we're preparing to go up to the premiere of the show, she was looking for a pair of shoes online, and the store that manufactured the shoe was sold out of it, but we found it on Amazon. And so it's like, and so yes, do better. I don't like these big top down corporate, like, do better. But until we are, it's not black and white. It's a little more complicated. So yes, absolutely. First step to get Dick Gregory products is to search your local Black-owned businesses, bookstores. There's plenty of them that are there. And if they don't have them, tell them shame on them, because they're readily available for them to carry them. So, and I walk into Black bookshops all the time, and white independent bookshops, and I see all my dad's books here. They're all six, including the Japanese version, which you won't find here. But to go online and buy and purchase I have a case of the Japanese version of Niggers, not because I can read it, just because it reminds me of the impact. It reminds me of the impact. that this man had and continues to have. But the so right now as we speak, Nigger has been, we've re-released that. Cooking with Mother Nature, No More Lies, Dick Gregory's Political Primer, and Defining Moments in Black history with Black crossouts. So Defining Moments in history, reading between the lies, not the lines, but reading between the lines. So all 5 of those books are, you're not going and paying insane amounts of money for someone who has an original, they're back out. And so, and also it's a good point because I get a lot of people calling saying, oh, I don't like the new covers. I don't like there's a lot of stuff that's above our pay grade. And there's folks who get paid an insane amount of money to design these covers. And the reason that the covers are so vibrant now, most of us go onto digital platforms to purchase things. And if it doesn't pop out in that little thumbprint, so when I look at my dad's traditional book covers compared with the new vibrant ones, you almost don't see them. And so the vibrant book covers, the new ones, are for a very clear purpose. And so, because I was the loudest one in the HarperCollins meeting, thinking I knew everything there is to know, and trying to bark them down until they put up, okay, this is how people buy books now. There's 1,000 books that are showing up on this screen right now. Which one do you want? And so some things are complicated. And I learned a long time ago to trust professionals, and especially if I respect them, but always question stuff and respectfully ask questions. A lot of people get sick, man. They come to the doctor and they're just coming at them wrong. It's profoundly hard to become a physician, profoundly hard. And not all of them are lying to you. Many of them, they're fed the same garbage that's fed to us. And many of them are drinking soda pop and diabetics and obese and smoking cigarettes too. So to respect them and ask questions with respect. And so, well, I'm not going to take the shot because of this. First of all, you don't have to explain to anybody. You don't have to explain to anybody. The First Amendment allows for you not to take the shot. So just don't take the shot and go and be quiet. Some of these things are not about being, bombastic. It's about understanding that different people live their lives in different ways and to respect how they live their life. And so it's not everything needs to be, a knock 'em out brawl and drag. And, there's more than one. Yes, that shot could be right for someone, but it may not be right for you. So I'm not going to force it on you, and don't force it on me. That was what was the right fit for you. And so, as a rule, I don't talk about politics, I don't talk about religion, and I don't talk about vaccinations. Like, people are too passionate, and it's like, I wonder sometimes, I have a nephew, who I love to life, man. And he got caught up in that flat earth piece. And, as I'm a scientist. I don't get into arguments with non-scientists, and I don't get into arguments with folks who are intellectually lazy and don't want to do the work. I just say, ain't that nice? That's cute. Believe whatever you want to believe. But know this, you can't swim, you can't row a boat, let alone navigate a boat. So it doesn't matter if the earth is flat or round. Your ass ain't never going to go to the edge of it. So stop spending so much time on shit that doesn't matter. Focus on it. But again, we're so confrontational. We just want to say shit that gets responses. And so do shit that gets responses. Clean your diet up, clean your life up, positive mental attitude. Get sleep. The amount of folks in our community who don't sleep, they lay down. But every time there's a chime from their phone, they're popping up. Turn your phone off. I mean, all these phones have settings you can put them on. If my mom calls me at 3 a.m., my phone will ring. My wife calls me at 3 a.m., but most people who call me at 3 a.m., I'm not hearing it. But most of us, because we're so hooked on these phones, man, they're the new crack. They create a dopamine drip. And so you post your picture up. How many likes did I get? How many did? Man, these algorithms are real, man. I mean, so we have to slow down and take control of our lives back. And so, good information is power. Bad information is bad power. Not all power is good power. So slow down and live your life. Let others live. Not, don't go around forcing, well, I'm a vegan, so you should be a vegan. I advocate for not killing animals because I don't think it's sustainable. And when everyone is doing something, the reason the Amazon forest, the most precious rainforest in the world, well, one of the most precious, there's plenty, Madagascar has a precious rainforest, and I call them precious because they're the Earth's lungs. They clean the air and water and recirculate it back out. So when we start burning the Amazon solely to raise beef so folks around us can buy $1 burger, well, if you want to eat a burger, put some value on it and spend $20 for it. And that's not me saying like, oh, excessive, live a life in excess. I'd rather you have one $20 a month burger a month than $51 burgers that are killing you. And they're not just killing. If you want to go over in the corner and kill you, I mean, do you? But when what you're doing is killing the earth, that's the only reason I step up and say, and step in and say, be mindful about where you purchase your meat products, because it puts a tremendous detrimental impact on the earth. And there's only one Mother Earth. We're not going to get part of the reason all these billionaires are trying to colonize Mars and because they see what we're all doing, not just Black folks, everyone. And now that China, Latin America, Africa, all these nations have a booming middle class now. Now they all want Chuck E. Cheese and McDonald's. They want their McNuggets, their dipping sauce. Well, holy shit, there won't be a rainforest if we got to grow that. And my pop, we would always wonder, where are they growing all these chicken wings? Because there's right. One chicken has 2 wings. One chicken, 2 wings. So if a brother's ordering 100 wings, that means we killed 50 chickens for the month. Where's the rest of the chicken, man?
It says there's more chickens than people, though. I don't understand that we eat that much chicken. It's a Snapple fact. It says there's more chickens than people on the planet. I said, how is that so?
I mean, have you ever seen people the Super Bowl alone justifies that statistic. I mean, the Super Bowl alone justifies that. I mean, the math is so wrong that we pick the one part of the bird that is so limited in scale, and we become, that's the part of the bird that folks are obsessed with. It's almost like, man, I sure love chickens, but I only like the beak. Well, damn, you got to eat 50 beaks to get full. So we're going to kill 50 chickens. So yeah, a lion wouldn't do that, man. A tiger wouldn't do that. That would understand the waste and the flawed logic in that. So some of the things we just got to think, man. We got to become thinkers again. We got to say, where everything you put on your plate, you got to trace it back. You don't have to do it each time you eat it. Yeah. Trace back the origin. Start holding these companies accountable. My dad, every company that we believe in, we bought stocks in. And so we had stocks in that company, because if it's something you believe in, you should support it. Like I talk about your show. I talk about my dad's books. And so people always want to say, oh, well, this activist, they didn't have money. They had to raise, like after my dad passed, the reason it was a month before we had his funeral, because 10,000 people were there, man. We didn't have no private small family. My dad was a man of the people. We knew people were mourning. We wanted to make sure everyone had access to it. 10,000 people came for 3 days. And so, I mean, it took me 2 weeks just to get the permits for the parade in the city. And I'm doing this while I'm still grieving the loss of my dad. So folks were like, oh, the family doesn't have money to lay Dick Gregory to rest. And it was only, I don't even want to give it much attention. It was only a small group of clowns that were perpetuating and
they say y'all had a GoFundMe. I didn't see the GoFundMe anywhere, but people claiming there was a GoFundMe to bury your dad.
And so there wasn't. Someone had some, and something happened right now. Someone could go out and set up a GoFundMe. So there probably was 10 GoFundMes. But was there a Gregory family GoFundMe? Absolutely. Dick Gregory died a multimillionaire, and he continues to have a multi-million-dollar estate. That doesn't mean that there's $200,000 liquid cash. So things were pulled out of properties, things were pulled out of, because a lot of that, I mean, but as zero was north of $300,000, and that was with a lot of people absorbing some of that cost. It really, we're talking about 75 porta potties brought in for the folks who were standing outside in line to come in, contracting food trucks, additional security. Man, when I walked into the church for the 10,000 capacity church, I was hit with a $50,000 bill that I did not pay, and I immediately ripped it up. But it was a $50,000 bill that was handed to me because they wanted to put additional satellite trucks. We had contracted with TV1 and Roland Martin to provide a live feed. Everyone else could tap into that feed. And, you know, we're a Black supporting family. So we wanted folks to have to go to Black folks in order to get this. And so it was, you know, it may have been C-SPAN, maybe not, but one of their satellite trucks came in. And for them to run a fiber optic cord and patch it into the church's system, $50,000. And so me as a grieving son that's already, you know, beat over the head, but it was well worth it financially. You know, we weren't just laying grandma or grandpa to rest. I mean, this was an icon. Definitely. And we were, you know, you can get married 10 times. You only get one chance to get a funeral right. And so we said, take the time. You know, we didn't have any my dad didn't have any religious beliefs that constrained us to doing this right. We had plenty of time. We had Secret Service details that had to be coordinated. Man, the Fruit of Islam was beefing with the Christian church security. Man, it was biblical, some of the things I was dealing with at my mom's funeral, man. I was at that church for 8 hours, man.
Yeah, it was long, man. Wow.
And I was there, and I didn't see my dad's funeral. I watched my dad's funeral 3 weeks later on YouTube because I was working, man. Like, my dad's funeral was not for me. I had already come to terms with the transition and grieving process beginning, because for 10 years I knew my dad's health was waning, and I would incrementally mourn with him, unbeknownst to him. He didn't know what I was doing. I'd pick his brain. I would get my dad. He wasn't an organ donor, although I am. So I'm not saying, well, Brother Dick didn't do it. Don't. He had different trust issues because he grew up in a different time. He wasn't an organ donor. As a scientist, when I'm going, anything I have that can help folks live longer, great. I don't need it where I'm going. So but he had a will, but he didn't have a living will. So so when we were in the hospital, and some of these things you just have to laugh. It's even as difficult as the moment was, well, what is your father's position on organ donor? I would say, well, I got to go back to his routine, because so much of his routine, he answered these questions, and he always would say, you know, if I die, I ain't giving none of this shit away. It is one per customer. I'm not giving up so much of the hemorrhoid. So I told that to the neurosurgeon, and they were just I said, I'm going to extract from that he's not an organ donor. And so they said, what is his beliefs about if he was to code, does he want intervention? Does he want life-saving intervention? Would he want us to intervene and use, you know, mechanical means to keep him alive? And I said, absolutely. Because again, from his comedy show, I always remember him saying that, man, if I'm ever on a machine, y'all better keep me on that motherfucker till I turn into a raisin. And so from that, I extracted the brother was definitively, if he coded, he wanted if he was ill, and if an emergency arrived, he wanted everything to be done to keep him here. He knew he still had work to do. And he also, just to talk about a family's love for their mother, he was very clear on that. He always would say, man, and this is on the audience, not man to man, if me and Lil, my mother's Lillian, if me and Lil are ever in an accident, y'all better not take me to the same hospital you take Lil to, because these niggas, meaning the 10 Gregory kids, these niggas will take my organs to give them to her. And so he was very clear. and I can attest that there's a couple of them that would. And so, it just, you know, it's you know, the life cycle is so beautiful. Yeah. So many of the folks around my dad were cut down prematurely. Yeah. We know the name: Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Dr. King.
Everybody 40 too. It was Malcolm's birthday.
Just an amazing brother. It just, you know, and so, I mean, you know, my dad was close with John Lennon assassinated. Mm-hmm. My dad was supposed to be, with Larry Flint. You know, my dad and Larry Flint they championed First Amendment rights all over the world. Larry wanted different amendments for different reasons than what
Right.
than what my dad did. But First Amendment's First Amendment, and so that First Amendment also protects our right, to have an opinion and a decision about the vaccine. So it's been an amazing ride. It's been just so incredibly uplifting. So to now have this documentary, one of the hardest things you could ever ask us Gregory children is, what does your dad do for a living? And I would always say, how much time do you have? Because there is no easy response to that question. So now I say, if you have 110 minutes, go and watch the one and only Dick Gregory. It is at you, even you, as well as Dick Gregory,
I know it's not
you will
too
learn. So,
There's so much
I
to
mean,
do,
it
man.
is just,
He'll get
it
no
is
credit for a
just,
lot of things he did.
oh
It's
man, and
amazing.
this is going, he never cared about credit, but this
Mm-hmm.
is going to change that. I mean, folks are going to, folks here coming from me, oh, well, that's his son. I want
Oh.
folks to see this. And so Kevin Hart and Lena Waithe are the executive producers on it. Andre Gaines is the director and producer. And, I'm an executive producer on it because I'm an executive producer on anything that the estate is sanctioned on my dad. So I have veto power and can say that's not right and don't have to get lawyers to come in for it. I'm part of the process. So the feature film, the biopic on my dad, we're getting ready to make that announcement soon. That's also Lena Waithe and Kevin Hart. And so it's going to be fun, man. We're talking about, my dad has a book about the assassination of Dr. King and the government's involvement with it. The book has two titles. It was originally Codename Zorro, which was the FBI's code name for Dr. King. So it was originally Codename Zorro. Then it became Murder in Memphis. It's the same book. So if you see it by either title,
Mark Lane
pick it
too.
up.
Mark Lane was a
My
co-author.
dad and Mark Lane.
Okay.
Mark Lane was a co-author.
He
Mark
died
Lane,
a year before your daddy died. He died in Charlottesville.
absolutely. And they were close right up to then. I'm still close with Mark Lane's family. Steve Jaffe, who was a good friend of my dad and Mark Lane's, is the executor of Mark Lane's estate. So Steve Jaffe and I are collectively in talks to turn that book into a feature film.
Wow.
There's probably about 10 of my dad's properties. So I view my dad from a film standpoint. I view it as a franchise. It's not just going to be one documentary, one film. We're being very particular to carve out the rights so people can't gum up the rights and say, oh, well, you can't do that story. No one entity will own all of Dick Gregory's audiovisual expressions of his life. So Lena Waithe has been amazing, man. I mean, Lena Waithe has been absolutely, she refuses to take no for an answer. She's probably had 2-3 hour conversations with my mother. She's just so incredibly respectful, which isn't the norm in Hollywood. Most people feel entitled to things. They feel like I'm paying money for these rights, so I'm taking them and doing it my way. That has not been the case at all. Not with the documentary, not with the feature film. Not since Spike Lee's Crooklyn have I seen a filmmaker depict the Black family as beautiful as Lena Waithe does. And I know anytime you're successful, you have your detractors. So I hear that. So get out there and do it too. I mean, Lena Waithe shouldn't be the only chip in the filmmaking cookie. Get out there and do it too.
Is she a Taurus too? Is she a Taurus, Lena?
You know what? I'm not as good as that as my dad. I'm not sure. So look that up. But she's an incredible filmmaker. I mean, and it just is I'm not into horror films. I feel like life is horrifying enough just reading the news. So I don't watch a whole, and I startle too easily. So a wrong drum roll in a movie can startle me.
May 17th, you're a Taurus. May 17th.
Okay. You talked it up. All right. So now the next time I'm with her, I'm going to act like I always knew that. So thank you, Brother Ron.
Them was incredible though. It does speak to our experience because we've been traumatized. We have a lot of generational trauma.
Look,
and it spoke to me because I know those stories on them. That was real for us.
Do you know? I don't know if it was the episode. If it was so. Again, I'm not into the horror genre, so I do a little fast forwarding as I watch them. The section they did on not racism, but capitalism, when they showed the white realtors in Los Angeles intentionally soliciting Black families to move into the more middle-class Black neighborhoods, knowing that would create a panic, and they would start, the white folks would start selling their homes aggressively, and they would capitalize on it. Oh man, that was brilliant. That scene, and I don't know what episode that was, because we've been, my wife and I have been skipping around a bit, but I'll get it and get it back. You need to, if you don't watch anything, you need to watch that episode, because it so beautifully showed that as much as racist white folks may hate Black people, they don't hate them more than they like making money. And it so beautifully depicts that. So many of the people who had negative things to say about Lena Waithe and them, and I heard, just loosely, Black pain, trauma, porn, and all those things that were, I mean, it's only porn if folks are getting off on it. So I can't stop but the expression and what we experience. There could be films told to the end of the day that capture the horrific nature of what Black folks were subjected to. So I'm never going to say, oh, there's too much of that. I'm going to say, balance it out. Black folks can't just keep getting beat over the head. And part of what I'm doing, my dad and I had a media company, Dick Gregory Media, owned and operated by Tower Hill Entertainment. And that's what our purpose is, not just to show the, joy and pain. You got to balance it out. So I understand. My dad and I decided some time ago we weren't going to go see any more slave films. Now, if someone came with a new twist on it, then maybe, sometimes you said, that's, and I believe that, but I'm also a rational human being. So if someone comes with a new spin or a deeper understanding, but there's only so many times I need to see a brother get whipped to say, okay, I get it. I understand it. I know it. And I knew it before I saw it in your movie. So, but I think a lot of that pushback came before people actually saw it, because that came out before it was released. And a lot of times these things, it's a lot of white folks that are in that foreign and domestic press pool. A lot of them are planting these seeds. There's a lot of folks that don't like the storytelling she's doing. So I'm going to give you a perfect example, and I'm probably going to upset some folks here, Ron, but you take two movies that came out around the same time. So, and I don't want you to tell me your opinion on either of them, because I want to finish this thought process beforehand. So you have Regina King's directorial debut, One Night in Miami, and you have Macro, Charles King. So you have the two Kings. So Macro, the company that's just doing incredible work in LA, operated by Charles King. So you have Charles King, who did Judas and the Black Messiah. So you had these two films come out pretty much the same time. One of them was a beautiful service and upliftment to Black folks. And the other one was a closeted pillow sack over your head, brick to the head, without most Black folks even realizing it. And so Judas and the Black Messiah, just because of the name, I almost didn't go see it. I said, you're going to tell me about this young street thug who is sticking up people and gets forced by the system to, it wasn't like he was already friends with Fred Hampton. This is some cat that didn't know, forced by the system, manipulated by the system. And now we're going to call the title, he's now Judas. What about the white devil that was J. Edgar Hoover? It should have been the white devil in the Black Messiah if we're going to have truth and titles. True. So I was already pissed off just at the title. I said, we're giving this insignificant Black cat Judas, who really wasn't a Judas because he wasn't a friend, way too much credit when he was manipulated by the same system that ultimately killed him. So you have a white cat that wrote that. And I'm going to tell you how I knew it was a white cat before I even looked into it and saw it. The same way I knew and I'm not someone that feels that like, oh, I only go see stories that are written by Black, because sometimes Black writers can be more demeaning to Black folks than white folks. I mean, this is, there's white folks out there. There's plenty of Black folks that are white supremacists and don't even realize it. That's the whole beauty of white supremacy. So just because something's Black, I mean, just because something's natural. Not everything natural is good for you. Not everything done by someone Black, even if it's well-intended, because if you are, unbeknownst to you, if you're a white supremacist, you'll put your name on something without even seeing the conflict in it. So
Right.
I saw how beautiful Regina King depicted Black folks. I mean, there was a real love for her subjects there. And a perfect example was the call with Malcolm and his daughter on the phone booth, the love between father and daughter in a film. That was palpable. You watch that scene, you could touch your screen and feel the pulse coming off of that. Black folks were not allowed in fine hotels then. So, a white filmmaker or writer would have made the hotel. You would have saw a cockroach on the wall. You would have saw a rat. You would have saw, she didn't make it seem like it was fabulous. She just focused on the Black beauty of the four subjects that were there. If you look, man, you can see folks who love you, who make films about you. And so then I turn, and I want to be careful because I don't want this to turn like it's an attack on Judas and the Black Messiah. But the big takeaways with Fred Hampton is the brother was like 18, 19, 20. He was damn near a kid himself when he was doing that heavy lifting. He was Jesse Jackson wasn't the original Rainbow Coalition. That Fred Hampton reached out to poor white folks, our Latino brothers and sisters. They touched on that in the movie so quickly in passing. What we focus on and how we make people feel is so important. You saw more Black people shoot at white cops in that film than white cops shoot at Black folks. There was a disproportionate amount. The brother at the end, when he kills the cop and the cop's on the ground and they do the close up and he calls him a pig and shoots him at point blank range, like that type of graphic imagery, we know more because it sets us back more than it advanced. We were the recipients of that. We were the one that was catching those bullets. So the fact that we had an opportunity as filmmakers to do a fadeaway, we don't show the. And I know people, we're showing too much Black pain. We don't have to show the pain in detail, but show the ending scene when the white cops raided in and had already drugged Fred Hampton. All the white cops were blurred. Like, no, I want to know these people, connect the dots. I want to know who they build character so I can say, yep, that guy who was friendly serving the brother drinks was also the brother at the end coming in killing folks. So, there was an odd and I know for a fact they were not aware that because, it says, hey, we're brothers making movies. Rather, every aspect of imagery has to be protected. And now that we're in the driving seat and we're now making films, it's so profoundly important that we stay true to the narratives and really we choose the part we want to highlight. You smoke your whole life, I can show you the glamour of it, or I can show you with the, breathing through a tube in your neck. I get the choice to make that as a filmmaker. So we can show the beauty of things, or we can show just the ugly, or we can balance it out. So if someone went into that and didn't know the beauty of Fred Hampton, all they would take around and say, like, he rallied folks to make them hate pigs and kill pigs because it was all about killing pigs and shooting pigs. He was so much more than that. That's such a disservice that now, and with these movies now, just like Spike Lee's Malcolm X, my dad and Spike Lee butted heads on that. My dad loved to butt heads with folks because it moved the narrative. It wasn't out of a lack of love. You can love someone and not admire their work. The First Amendment gives us the right to do that. So my dad knew Malcolm X. I didn't know Malcolm X. So I can't look at the film and say, oh, that was right or that wasn't right. But I have to respect folks who knew the person. So my dad had some issues because he felt like it wasn't accurate and true, but it's also subjective. My dad wasn't the only person that knew Malcolm X. I mean, Malcolm's family chimed in. So, and who says there can only be one film? And that was Hollywood's model for our heroes. They picked one filmmaker, they would make the film, and then it was done. We had one film about Malcolm on a big scale, and then it was done. There should be 10. We got 10 Supermans, and the cat's ficticious, man. Like, there should be 10 films on Malcolm.
I agree.
10 films on Martin. Like, we shouldn't just a one and done, because that's how they erase your history. You know how many young folks these days haven't seen Malcolm, haven't seen X? They don't know anything of. And if they do, that's the only thing they know about Malcolm X. Not during Black History Month. Google mentioned this for the year. there were the largest number of searches for autobiographies, not just in the United States, but domestic and abroad, were for the search of Malcolm X's documentary. This was not just for Black History Month, like people all over the world are have a passion and an affinity for Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali. Give these people it's okay for people to have different interpretations of them, and then we discuss it after. But you can tell when someone can love you to life and someone can love you to death. So I felt love to life after watching Sister Regina King's One Night in Miami, and I felt love to death after watching Judas and the Black Messiah. And some of these people are my friends, man. And but I just have to be honest.
Well, I got to ask you, I'm thinking about it now. I didn't think about it then. Are Charles King and Regina King related? I'm curious.
They're not. It's just a coincidence. I mean, probably the same slave owner,
plantation
400 years ago. but no, they're to my knowledge, they're not kinfolk. But both very. I mean, Charles King is exceptional, man. I mean, very. I mean, shit. Kobe had a bad game. Michael had a bad game. It's not like everyone who's great at what they do can't, have a misfire. I've seen my dad have a couple bad shows, and I didn't tell him, hey, that was a bad show. I was like, I knew you weren't feeling well.
I understand why you didn't tell him. He probably would have went off on you or something.
Yeah, and I loved it, because I loved the passion, because I knew he was always loving me to life, even when it was tough love. And we used to consider it a baptism when he would go off on it. And part of it, I also knew the health piece. I knew what he was going through. And when dementia is scary. When my dad was falling so frequently, and I mean, he would be this close to hitting his head on the ground before one of us would catch up. And he'd say, I'm not falling. I mean, old age is old age. I mean, we do a deep dive on this in the documentary, and talking about, there was a couple people when I first discussed my dad's dementia, and he was in the early process of Alzheimer's. He had recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And part of that was exacerbated by his dementia. Some of the impact of hatred isn't just from a brick to the head. It's the energy you absorb for your lifetime. I mean, this brother was on the receiving end of so much disdain, so much hatred. I can assure you, it never kept him up at night. And so even before his older age, he just was, hey, I'm following my North Star. I don't care what you think. I've earned the right not to care what you think. And the same way I treated my, nephew when he was talking to me about, the earth is flat. I said, look, man.
He must be a Kyrie Irving fan.
Do you have a, and they listen, and great. There's some folks, man, that have so much economic abundance, they can sit around and just kick it about dumb shit. We don't. Our community doesn't. Like, we can't sit around and, it's, I love life. The reason I don't spend time talking about pro-life, pro-choice, like a lot of wealthy white folks do, and even non-wealthy, because I got too many folks dying in the full spectrum of life, not just in the womb, but folks fresh out the womb, folks, close to the tomb already, the full spectrum of Black folks being killed. So I don't have the luxury to just sit back and say, well, I am pro-life, full spectrum pro-life. So anti-capital punishment. And that doesn't mean that no one could ever do anything to me or my family that I think warrants them dying. I should just be responsible for doing it myself. I shouldn't have the government have to be the one that makes the decision of who gets death, who does. So when I say I'm anti-capital punishment, it's not because I don't think there's some horrible human beings out here. There are. But I just know that system disproportionately, once again, impacts Black folks and marginalized folks and poor folks. So that's the reason the government can't get too much stuff right, man. They didn't get the pandemic. We're the wealthiest nation, or we couldn't even get folks toilet paper. So now you want to say you suddenly have the capacity to know everyone who needs to die doesn't need to die. I mean, that's just a call that, I can understand a family being fired up enough that them wanting that for someone who wronged them, I definitely can. I just don't think the government should be trusted to be, you know, the executioner and the decision maker for who lives and who dies. So it is life is complicated, but it's also beautiful, man. I mean, we got to sit back, and we don't do that enough. That's what I loved about Brother Paul and my dad. You know, the laughter, the you know, it's, you know, all work and no play is always a recipe for disaster. So we got to take the time and laugh more. We sat and watched probably 4 hours of Paul Mooney and yes, it's all available on YouTube. Many of where it's platforms where his estate's not going to get money. I already pledged to my brother Rudy. I said, look, I have a magnificent team of attorneys on the East Coast, West Coast, who are just kicking ass in protecting my dad's intellectual property. I mean, when folks see the final analysis of how much intellectual property we've been able to reclaim, not for greedy reasons, but to say we want to get it out there, but we want to decide how it gets out there. And to see to it that, you know, these folks' family, what I'm doing is not for my siblings. We're all straight. This is for 10 generations of Gregory's. I want Tower Hill Farm where Gregory's grew up. I want that to be like, you know, the Bush family's Kenny Bunkport. I want it to be like the Hyannis compound that the Kennedys have. I want that type of generational wealth. If they want to go to school, they don't have to get a loan for college. If they want to buy a home, they don't have to. So Dick Gregory worked hard enough. He planted enough seeds to have that type of generational wealth. And so my goal is to really see to it that, you know, Tower Hill Farms, another company that I have is Tower Hill Farms, plural, which is it's a food and beverage, it's a lifestyle brand, it's clothing, it's sheets, it's furniture, it's everything is organic. Everything is, we do in my home, the sofa's organic. The bed, the mattress, the sheets, it's organic. The frame it sits on is organic. It costs a lot of money, but it doesn't cost as much money. Most people, again, we go back to what you're putting into your body. Well, you come home exhausted, mouth half open, snorting and snoring and breathing on your mattress. Well, if it's full of polyurethane and all these other chemicals, you might as well be huffing a marker all night long. It's the same thing. You know, I mean, you ever open, that's why I don't have carpet in my home. Have you ever smelled the toxicity of a new carpet that's been installed and the foam padding? I mean, you almost feel you could light a match and it would go up. But, you know, we got plush carpet, and the particles from the carpet get in the air, they get in your lungs. You have to untrain your mind for everything that people told you was good for you and beautiful, you should aspire to. Most of it you were lied to, and you were lied to by folks that had a vested interest. They own the carpet company, they own the mattress company. So, you know, I don't give plugs. We purchased an avocado mattress. It's a company out of California that everything in it is organic. Everything in it, it smells, coconut smells, but everything in it is organic. So the first night we used to have a Tempur-Pedic, I had to put that in a spare room for almost a month to allow it to off gas before we could sleep on it. And that's when we realized, we said, wait a minute, something, you know, we're wondering why we're so sick. Everything, when you think in your home, you know, we close the windows, we turn on these HVAC systems, things get hot, we're boiling things, we're putting things in plastic pots, all our food stored in plastic. Then we wonder why our body's full of nanoparticles and plastic. That's where the cancer is coming from. It's no mystery. The real mystery to me, and I understand why, is why folks are not more inquisitive. If I'm eating the same food, the same bad food that my grandpa ate, how come I'm getting and coming down with conflictions that his generation wasn't? It's because the food's not the same. Most carrots today are not a carrot. Most folks wouldn't know a real carrot to a genetically modified carrot. I wouldn't. That's why I have to trace it back and trust where I'm buying it from. You have to have some trust, you know, trust but verify. But you have to have some trust. If you eat fish, where did that fish come from? If you eat beef, where did that beef come from? Well, reduce your consumption of it. Be friendly to the environment, eat less of it. I'm not saying everyone needs to eat a vegan. I'm definitely not saying some of the sickest patients I had were vegans because all they ate was soy milk, soy
I'm
cheese.
glad you read my mind.
All they eat is soy.
My mind.
I mean, if you came to my house and ate for a week and everything I made was from broccoli milk, broccoli butter, broccoli chicken, broccoli this, you would be sick because the body needs diversity. You can't just feed it the same thing. And that is, that is, preserved food. That is not real food. And so I always say, if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you shouldn't want fake chicken. If you want chicken, go eat chicken. I want fake chicken. I want fake this. Well, for me to make this taste and feel like it's processed. And so for me to process, so a lot of times, man, some of the sickest folks, so it's folks who for their lifetime, they've been meat eaters. They make a decision that they're going to become a vegetarian. And so they make the same thing they would eat, but then they just slide the meat off the plate. Well, now there's a major nutritional deficit because you're not offsetting your B12 group, your niacin. There's so many things you're not. It's a science and a logic to what we put in our body. And you have to respect that. And you have to take the time to balance it out. And it's what we call one of the oldest tribes, and someone list your show will call in. It's an African tribe in Kenya, and they respect cows. They view them as sacred. They don't eat cows. They don't eat beef, but they draw the blood and the milk from the cow, and they put that into a mixture, and they sustain life just on that blood and milk mixture. It's in Kenya, I believe. If I showed you the pictures of it, you've seen these. I mean, they're nomads. They travel and they move, and they travel with their cows. Some of the medical research has found these are some of the healthiest human beings that have ever lived. And so when I tell people, when people say, oh, eating animal products aren't healthy, that's not the position that I'm taking. It's not healthy for the environment to produce. If everyone suddenly decided they wanted to do what their Kenyan brothers were doing, well, I'm not saying all Kenyan brothers, this particular tribe, and drink milk, cow's milk mixed with blood, we'd be burning down the Amazon for bloody milk. And so all of it's a mistake. It becomes, once we industrialize things, if me and you decide we want to make brownies and we're making 100 brownies a day, suddenly we have to go to making 2 million brownies a day. The brownies are going to have a lot of bullshit in them because we're moving too quick because we can't scale that quickly. So when you try to scale something to an unnatural scale, Frankenstein shit starts to happen, and technology and advances, like what's the beef, the beef that everyone, I mean, the fake meat that everyone started eating about a year ago, and then it was in McDonald's, it's in Burger King. Oh boy, everyone was, I'm forgetting the name of it.
Right, Impossible, something like that.
Impossible. So when Impossible first came out, small company, small footprint, and they were using some type of bean curd or bean extract, but it was very expensive. Then you can see when the corporate money came in and bought it is when they shifted to more of a synthetic soy derived, and I'm forgetting the protein that they use to make it have that meat taste. And here's how messed up we are. They use, red dyes and beets to make it look like it's bleeding. And so now I got this veggie patty that psychologically I'm so into killing things and eating it, I got to put fake one. Stop eating fake stuff. Stop. This is a fake orange. Well, I bet it's going to be as healthy as a fake orange most likely should be. So stop eating fake stuff. And so if you want a burger that bad, go eat a burger. Pay more for it, good quality beef, and eat less of it. There's smarter ways to go. We're too much. I know this is not the textbook definition of absolutism, but I use this example all the time. We always have to be absolutely something. Like I said earlier, red or blue pill, pop both. Take both. You don't have to stop boxing yourself in a box. And so, no one cares more about a vegan or a vegetarian's diet than the meat eater. Say, hey man, I thought you didn't eat that. Hey, stop worrying about my plate and worry about your plate. We're always so worried about, competing with things. And so it's important to know that, white refined sugar, white refined flour, when we refine things, it's what I knew. Sugar on its own doesn't cause diabetes because I've been all through sub-Saharan Africa and watched young kids from the time they're young to the time they're 80 chew on sugar cane and never have diabetes until they start eating refined white sugar and high fructose corn syrup. So it's just like, for instance, I can take petroleum and I can extract petroleum jelly from it that is not toxic, or I could have you drink petroleum and die. So this stuff is complicated. Not everything that's part of something, it's just a blanket well, that must be bad for you. And so
Right.
we have to take the time to slow down, do the work, surround ourselves with other, because the work's too much for one person to do themselves. I would never say that. Do the work, surround yourself with people who are doing the work, and love. And as my dad would say, be lovable. It's easy to love. There's folks out here, that are beating their wife and beating their family right now, and I'm doing this because I love you. Again, folks can love you to death or they can love you to life. And more important than loving is to be lovable. Do shit that people can love you for doing. And so, not just for the love, I don't do what I do for the love. I give enough self-love that if I didn't receive any outside love, I'd be good. I don't expect everyone to be able to do that. I had a unique upbringing, a unique set of circumstances that was a vegan from the moment I was born. It's a treat in the Gregory house was we grew up on a farm. I always tell folks the roosters at Tower Hill Farm, because there was no animals there except for the animals, no domestic animals or farm animals, were the juice extractors. I would know Big Mike. I'd know it's time to wake up when I heard the high-powered juice extractors on and the carrot juice. Anyone who's ever juiced knows it's a very definitive sound of vegetables being juiced. And that's when I knew it was time to get up. That was the roosters at the Gregory farm, where the high-powered juice extractors, vegetable extractors, making all 10 of us Gregory our ginger, carrot juice, and apple. Brother Mike knew what all of our favorites were. Christian always liked the apple juice with ginger and celery in it. So that was our breakfast, and we didn't frown. That's all we knew. And so when people say, well, I'm buying this junk food because my babies want it, my children, your child wants crack, you don't give it to them. That's why they're children. That's why you're their parent, to protect them from this. And once you give it to them, they become addicted to it because it's addictive. So they don't stand a chance. That's why you have grandpa who had his legs cut off from diabetes, mom and dad, and then the children. You say, oh, it's something in our genes. It's not your genes. If everyone keeps hitting themselves in the head with a hammer, the whole family's going to have concussions. I mean, the math, the science is that simple. You need to stop and undo what you're doing. And it's not easy. It takes work. Learn to love the things that love you back. Learn to eat good so your body, the food loves you, and you can love it back. And so that's the charge, man. That's the marching orders. That's the orders I used to get every day, man, and I'm still giving them.
Okay, like I'm glad you brought this. Like you reading my mind. Like all this stuff I want you to bring up, you bringing up. Like you actually reading my mind with this stuff. But I'm glad you point out the soy thing, because your father, when I first started interviewing him, he talked about one mistake he made in cooking with Mother Nature was including soy in his original publication.
So,
I'm assuming y'all took that out now in the updated version.
We didn't. And the reason we didn't, because none of his books have we edited. So none of it, since he wasn't here to edit it, none of it. So we put disclaimers. This book was written in 1970, so-and-so. So, this book isn't a manual. This is a read this and then go out and be mindful. This book is from, not 1960 something. Be mindful that this is it. It's like people that read the Bible and they take it literal. No, this is something to, Dick Gregory was always a master of getting you to, think, to shake you up and to get you to think. And so we're republishing these books to make folks think. And if you start to think for yourself, it's going to, so yes, not just that he included soy in the book, also, there was a fair amount of soy in the Gregory house, but again, it wasn't everything. It was. We were using, and I don't want to confuse folks, but there's folks who are in various parts of Asia that eat bean curd, which is soy, but it's when you start processing things that the problem with soy is it elevates estrogen, and the problem with elevated synthetic estrogen is estrogen makes cells grow. It also makes tumors grow. And so that's the reason that we saw men who were eating soy with elevated estrogen levels. So it was important to understand that was with the soy that was then. Now, 90% of the soy out here is synthetic soy. It's modified. It's Frankenstein soy. So it's even worse than the soy that folks were consuming in the 70s and the 80s. The other thing is, in this country, corn. So corn was always the filler. You could go get a potato chip and it had more corn in it than it did potato. Well, once we started using corn to power our automobiles and power our machines, once corn became that, they said, no, corn's more valuable as a fuel. So then soy became the filler. So now your potato chips many times will have more soy in it. So soy and genetically modified coconut. So anytime you buy like an inexpensive, baked good and you always smell coconut, that's because they're using synthetic coconut as an oil to make it with. Like, if you listen to your body and you smell and listen to your senses, your olfactory nerve doesn't lie to you, man. What you're smelling. My papa would always say, what have you ever smelled that smelled like smoke that wasn't smoke? Say, oh, this kind of smells bad. This kind of smells like smoke. It's important to understand that you need to listen to learn and learn to listen to your body again. Not what you've trained your body to say, but what your body's really saying. That voice inside that we've all turned off because we've become so dependent on these phones, man. I have 15 nieces and nephews. I have godchildren. I really love them all to life. I want them to thrive. And we'll be downtown DC, and I'll say right now, if a tsunami alert went off and you said head north, get to higher ground, without looking at your phone, would you know north, south, east, west? No, why? Everything is these phones. And so look what happened just recently with the gas shortage. Folks were fighting each other in the gas lines just 2 weeks ago. Imagine, and just because someone hacked into infrastructure and turned the pipeline off. Imagine if someone shut it down for a month or 2 months. Folks would be rioting. We're so entitled, we can't think of a life without having, our precious resources. So we need to learn to become self-sufficient. We look at what happened in Houston because folks selfishly, again, the energy industry in Texas chose to keep profits and not invest in winterizing for that 1 in a 100-year ice storm. What's coming? 1 in a 100-year flood. Well, that could be tomorrow. So do you want to be living in this low-lying area when that hits? We know it could. So they knew it was possible for a cold snap like that to happen. But where all of the other power plants in the country winterized, they chose not to. So since they didn't winterize, now you have all these folks who are like pipes busting in their home, that don't even have proper winter coats, no heat in their homes, that were just so unprepared because we failed them. Not we, me, and you, but society, government, industry. So the food industry, your parents' home cooking's not industrialized. Whenever you industrialize things, the focus of what the priority is making your investors happy, your stockholders happy. It's not about protecting you or anyone else. It's simply about making a group of folks wealthier. We look at the opioid epidemic. We knew how toxic that was. You look at the money. They made a calculated decision. We'd rather make the billions and then pay out the millions in claims. You do the math. If you are diabolical and you don't love life and you don't love the planet Earth, man, there is so many ways to become a billionaire. I honestly believe it's hard to become a billionaire without having some of that to sustain you, because there's so many places where you should be, not just giving out a little crumbs, but reinvest. Clean water. The fact globally there's not clean water. The fact that, and again, I don't want to get in front of so many of Pop's narratives that you're going to see in the documentary, but there's so much that we're talking about right now that we really drill down on in this documentary, and want people to watch it again. Well, a lot of it's archival footage, so you can't look at, a 40-year-old Dick Gregory and say, oh, well, brother Dick, because his opinion, like the amount of people say, oh, Dick Gregory never said that. You're going to tell me what the man said? I was with him every day. Like, someone has a right to change their mind, to evolve and grow. So because you listen to a clip from him when he was 45 and said something, and now you're going to want to hold folks' feet to the fire. So we grow, we evolve, we learn. And as practitioners, as doctorate means to teach, our job is to educate folks, not just our public, our community. When we think I'm not upset with, oh, cancel culture, cancel culture. I am okay with holding people accountable. And
Right.
so you can hold someone accountable without canceling them outright. Right now, if you started choking and, we'd run over and we'd start doing the Heimlich maneuver on you. And, we'd want to clear your airwaves. If tomorrow we found out that Dr. Heimlich was a horrible, hated blacks, hated Jews, Nazi, well, we wouldn't throw the life-saving technology out the window. We'd probably change the name and should. Right. And so, but don't get caught up in the semantics of canceling good things because bad people. We should have never canceled the Cosby Show. If you want to cancel and want to tap, okay, well, it doesn't have to be all or none. So when I hear people running around like, oh, mute R. Kelly, hold R. Kelly responsible, absolutely. But I just landed at John Wayne International Airport and had to listen to Elvis as I'm picking up my luggage. If you ain't canceling those cats, stop canceling just us. So stop having different standards. And so to say that doesn't mean you're pro people who are taking advantage of folks. Like, I don't know, because, the news I read is not, the tabloid or entertainment page. It's I'm searching information. I watch virtually no news. I read all of my news. I read a tremendous amount of international news sources. I'm not a newspaper guy like my dad. I'm reading it on my devices. I have trusted websites. And what's kind of been cultivated for me and my taste is going to be different. People say, oh, well, give me the list of what you read. You got to do the work. Sometimes it's too simple to just have. There might be something I'm missing that one of your other listeners is going to go read and come on your show and enlighten me about. Education's a never-ending process. As much wisdom that I'm certain I have, because I worked hard to get it. It wasn't armchair wisdom. It's 30 years of treating. In Washington, D.C., 80% of my patients had a graduate degree. I mean, these were very intelligent patient base. I learned more as a practitioner engaging and sharing and talking like we're doing now than I ever did from school, from living your life, from practicing these things and using good wisdom is really the best way forward. So it's to you, Ron, I know you're doing it. To all your listeners, this is what I'm calling my Dick Gregory studio. You can see this is the a young brother. Yeah. If you look on my webs, on all of you, I've ran all my dad's social media forever. I posted that with his name and information on it, but it's a beautiful. I talk to Big Mike frequently. He's a good brother. He's out there doing the heavy lifting. I had the brother send him a copy of that. I get so much stuff people send, and the love is real. I like to pay it forward. I like to I'll have folks who will come up. Oh, Dick Gregory was never on social media. I'm like, yeah, of course not. The man was 84. It took me 5 years just to teach him how to turn his smartphone on and off. And still he would turn it on, make a call, then turn it off because he didn't trust it. So it was, it was always full disclosure when I started my dad's social media page, is that it was rent. But I just got tired of explaining it to folks. And the amount of time, oh, isn't Dick Gregory dead? If they scroll to the top, they would very clearly see the note on the page of who's handling it, who's been handling it. So you can't make, and that's why I don't even, and you'll notice anytime there's a negative comment about anything, I've never erased, whether it's about me, whether it's about my dad, because I'm not into censorship. You got a right to say whatever you feel and folks always like to go back to my dad and Malcolm X before they became incredibly close. Malcolm was upset about so many entertainers being the face of Black activism. And Malcolm very strongly, he called out Dick Gregory. And that was before they knew each other. And so Malcolm started getting a taste, seeing Dick Gregory in the press and said, hey, wait a minute, this brother is kind of for real. He's kind of the real deal. So Malcolm X called my dad. My dad was in Chicago, which was home for him then. And Malcolm said, Brother Dick, this is Brother Malcolm. And they talked for about 30 minutes and then, a beautiful conversation, and said, when are you going to come and visit us at the mosque? And that was kind of a litmus test. to see, because most blacks then, black wouldn't have gone anywhere near Malcolm or the mosque. They wouldn't have been, if they did, they crept in there under the cover of darkness and crept out. So, Dick Gregory, being who he was, said, look, I'll come down there tomorrow, but only under one condition. He was like, you need to stand on the front steps with me in the front of the mosque, and we hold up the latest edition of Muhammad Calls, and that's, you'll see a picture. Malcolm's not in the picture because there were some things happening in the Nation of Islam at that point, so Malcolm couldn't be there. But it's my dad, and you see a big brother, Fruit of Islam, and they're in front of Chicago, whatever the number mosque is in Chicago, and they're holding up Muhammad Calls, and my boss wasn't, and that's ever since then. Dick Gregory and Malcolm X became so incredibly close. As a matter of fact, so someone can cherry pick, oh, this is what Malcolm said. Well, I might have said some things about you before I knew you. And if you only want to go back and bring up what was said before, and again, when somebody say, I'm here for it, I'm not here for it. I don't have time for it. I'm expressing it now for folks who must understand how insignificant some of that noise is to folks who don't know the truth. I mean, in our lifetime, our pursuit should be not what we want to happen, but for the truth. I remember we meditated and prayed aggressively, and we didn't, as my dad would always say, he didn't get into isms and osms. It was about a universal God, and our meditations and prayers were just about good energy, seeing light, transmitting love to folks. And we would sit for hours sometimes in the woods just meditating and fasting, not starving ourselves, but medicinally fasting, the profoundly different. And I remember my dad came into my room once. I had, I was a fake out soccer player, so I had all my gear on, getting ready to go to my little Plymouth Youth soccer game. And he, I was praying, and he said, hey, what are you praying for, Doc? My dad called me Doc long before, and many other folks long before I was a doctor. And so, hey, what are you praying for, Doc? And I said, yeah, I'm praying that we win this big game today, Dad. Why don't you send me some good energy that we win too? And, he sat down in front of me and said, I'm almost ashamed to hear you say that, man. And I'm horrified, because no loving son, young son, I may have been like 10 or 11 at the time, wants to make their father ashamed, especially when they hold their father in great esteem. He said, my whole life, I've been training y'all to pray for the truth and for what the universe wants to happen, not for what you want to happen. And so you should pray that you play your best game. You should pray that everyone stays healthy in that game. You should pray that whatever the outcome's supposed to be to come up, because you may win, and as you're going to your victory party, you may be in an accident and die. And so it stuck with me at a very young age, and I've prayed and meditated in a very different way ever since, to say, I don't think I know more than the universe. I don't think I know more than. So I pray, and as my dad would always say, when the Bill Cosby piece hit, his statement was, pray for the truth to come out. Not pray that Bill didn't do it, not pray for the truth to come out. And so, and we still say that, pray for the truth to come out, because there's purity and light in truth. And my dad would always say that, real power doesn't need, gunpowder and explosions. And he said, every morning you get up before the sunrise and you watch the sun come up, and you watch the sun smack darkness out the sky without making a sound. But we don't even hold that up and respect the universe enough. We just take that for granted. And so, we are guests on this planet. And we are tenants, and we haven't been ideal tenants. We haven't respected the property that we are leasing. We haven't respected our bodies are made up of mineral salts. We are the earth. Our spirit, that's us. This ain't us. And so we are made up of earth. We shed billions of cells per day. Understand what the body is. If you understood it, you would take better care of it. Look at the toothpaste you use. Look at the shampoos you use. They're filled with toxins. Take the time to untrain your mind. Well, I've always used Colgate, or I always use Crest. Take the time to untrain your mind to start doing what is good for you. Because you did it your whole life, or because mama gave it to you or daddy gave it to you, didn't mean they had a proper understanding. And they damn sure didn't have the options we have now. So slow down, pace yourself. And I just, and I say this, I've been saying this for 30 years as a healthcare provider. I can say it and know most people will hear it, and still, because it's addiction. And addiction isn't just chemical, it's psychological too. So many of these things we're addicted to. And so I've always strived not to be addicted to anything. So even when, oh, Christian, you drink, every year, not before there was like cute months to tell people stop drinking, I fast once a year, will take a month, sometimes 2 random months, and not drink anything, and so I'm not anti-medication. I could someday, get an infection or get something, I would use it. I prefer to allow my immune system to engage things. So let's say me and you go out, we eat some horrible food, jacks our stomach up, we get diarrhea. All diarrhea is your body saying, we need to flush this out of you. We say, no, let me go take a pill to make that stop. We say, wait a minute, this is your body trying to rid yourself of something. But since you don't have the time, you're going to go and take a medicine. So we're going to put something potentially toxic that's taxing on our liver into our body so that we can stop a natural processing. We just have to, there's a lot of wrong we have to unlearn. And, we just have to allow universal wisdom and the universal insight and universal intelligence to flourish.
I want to thank you for all that, because you asked a lot of my questions that I had in my mind. You actually went through the soil and all. But with the Malcolm thing, I could understand better now why your father had an issue with Spike Lee, because I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and there was nowhere in that book, as I can recall, that Malcolm had his head in the toilet when he was Detroit Red. What was the purpose of putting that image in people's minds? Because you can't erase that. And also, like what Ozzie Davis said, who participated in the movie, he did the eulogy speech, he did whatever.
Correct.
He said in a documentary, I thought it was profound. He said, I want Spike Lee to remake Malcolm X in 20 years from a different perspective, because a lot of this stuff was flawed. It was well made for what it was, but the story was flawed. And if you told the truth about who we were or who we are, it's more impressive than a lie that Hollywood tells. I mean, we're better than Superman. We're better than Wonder Woman. Our story is incredible.
We are Superman. We are Wonder Woman. And art is subjective. So to disagree with someone doesn't mean that there was I don't think Charles King had hate. Or sometimes even understanding. I can say this: Malcolm X, the movie X, did more good than it did bad. There's some folks who know nothing about Malcolm other than that, but they shouldn't be one-offs. Like, I agree with, Brother Ozzie Davis, and not just for that, all of these movies that are about, these legends in our community, legends normally get, how many goddamn Tarzans has there been? We take all these fake white folks and make 30 movies about
it. But the last Tarzan had George Washington Williams in it. It had George Washington Williams played by Samuel Jackson. If you learn about who George Washington Williams was, he was amazing. If you actually learn about him, and they put him in with fictional Tarzan, the last movie.
So, and again, I fancy myself as a filmmaker now. And there's artistic freedoms that we can take. Any opportunity that I can plug, but art is subjective. So if me and you went and watching Michelangelo paint the Sistine Chapel, say, well, why did you use that shade of blue? Because it's his shit. When we do our shit, we do it. So hey, I don't think Spike needs to redo it. I think someone needs to. Spike did it. And if Spike wants to redo it, God bless him. But someone else, and we should see to it that these stories get retold. Look, I don't want to say it's easy, but because of all of the platforms and all of the streamers that are out here now, it's important that, I was talking to Brother Nick Cannon, and this was maybe, about a year or so ago, we were having this conversation, and it was around the time of Kaepernick, and Nick is very close with Kaepernick, and it was a 5-minute video that Nick has a team of like 3 just incredible videographers he travels with, and they put together this 5-minute video with Nick doing, poetry, and it was powerful, it was heavy hitting, it was impactful, and it was shot in a way that it really it was enjoyable, and it was incredibly informative. It was powerful, and I watched it and I said, look, it would have taken, during my dad's generation, in the analog day that he lived in, it would have taken 500 buses of marchers to come and march for 3 days to have the impact that that 5-minute video had. We don't need to protest the same way. And I don't mind the folks who do, but I'm saying now we have so many resources. We have so many, access to there's so much economic abundance. You and I can make a film. Spike Lee did his first film using credit cards, man. Like, so it's not like, oh, the big studios won't finance us. Any group of us that could get together, we can make our own films. And that's what we're seeing.
Superstar friends like Bill Cosby, Michael
Bill
Jordan,
Cosby, absolutely.
Malcolm X, Magic Johnson, Janet Jackson.
As well as he should have.
Yeah.
As well as he should have. That's what and wealthy Black folks out in, I don't even say wealthy folks who respect the truth. I'm not only interested in Black truth, I'm interested in truth. I'm not going to say don't use the Heimlich maneuver on me if the brother wasn't Black. No, save my life. So, the same way we've been saving people's lives. So I'm interested in the truth. And so if you are, a connoisseur and you have an appetite for the truth, that's broad spectrum. But as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, so many of us as Gregory's are profound storytellers because we grew up with a master storyteller. And so there is so much power in writing and telling stories and the ability to write. I went undergrad at Morgan State. I remember it was required. I thought, wow, I said, this is just so incredible that they're forcing us to do so much, all of these, most classes you had to English 101, maybe 102. It was like up to 106 at one, because they said Black folks were so verbally gifted, but most of us can't write. We can't write, and not we can't write. We don't read, but we're not powerful writers. And words are so powerful. And as silly as it sounds, the pen is mightier than the sword. It is. And it was after my dad and I came out of Django Unchained that we realized, why powerful white civilizations have been rewriting history since the beginning of time, because after everyone who was alive at the time it happened, what really happened doesn't matter anymore. The story that I don't know if what happened in the Bible happened or not. I know it has tremendous impact on people because the story survived. So it's important to us storytellers to preserve. And Black folks, we historically, as part of our African lineage, we were oral storytellers. So do that. Put a record. All of us. You can make a whole movie with these things in our head.
Make a feature film with our phone.
Your elders record them, not because they're giving you all the information they're giving you is accurate. I've got so much misinformation from old folks, old wisdom, and old rules. So, but you don't have to challenge all of them on it, because if that's their belief, my job's not to shake up everyone's belief system. My job's to extract the good from it and carry that forward. And what doesn't resonate with me, I can take the good and not have to obsess over the bad.
But what I love about your father, he was a great historian in his own right, because he broke down I didn't know about no Dangerfield newbie. I heard about John Brown for a long time, just researching, but Dangerfield newbie, if you look up his photo of him, Jamie Foxx definitely his character in Django resembles Dangerfield newbie. And it's basically
you understand
embellished that.
Which is what most movies are, and which is beautiful because you learn so much from that. There probably was, before there was Superman, the character, there probably was some cat that was strong, that was fast, and we're like, hey, that cat is like Superman. And then with time, as it's gone on, all of these things, there probably was, some white cat swinging from the trees in Africa, making weird moans and yells, and they came up with Tarzan. So,
but John Henry was real though. But John Henry was a real person.
And part of how it's done is if you sprinkle real characters in, it helps folks to say, oh no, it was real, because this research, it's not all or none. A lot of these movies are very, and I'm fine. One Night in Miami was artistic freedom. That didn't happen. Those were events that happened over years that were reduced to that one night. That one night never happened. Jim Brown was disclosed at the beginning.
I'm curious, because Jim Brown, the only one left from that room that night. And it's like he was okay with it. Like he gave it his blessing.
Yeah, it's having the luxury of being around so many icons and knowing them personally, you know, yes, they were part of the movement, but the movement wasn't their everything. It was part of it. So there were other aspects. There was you look at, you know, Sam Cooke, and you look at, you know, Sam Cooke. When we look at it 100 years from now, many folks may feel Sam Cooke was as much as an activist as Malcolm X, from him leading by example in his ownership, owning his own masters, buying music. Like some, you know, like I never thought I would ever view O.J. Simpson as some type of like a, you know, civil rights activist. But it wasn't until I watched one of the documentaries and saw how many Black folks had never seen another Black person on TV ever until they saw O.J. Simpsons in commercials. If you don't think that inspires young Black people or all Black people, you know, by definition, no one should agree with everything any president does. So did I agree with everything Barack? Absolutely not, and nor should you. But you, for Black and brown people all over the world, even if they didn't understand a word of English, the image of this Black man and beautiful Black family being the most powerful person in the world changed their life. I mean, it absolutely, no matter where in the world you saw this, changed their life, and the dignity and grace that he served those 8 years with. And so, and then we get, horror and disgrace. I said, man, the universe is giving us real blessings here, and just get out of certain folks' way, give them enough rope, and they'll take care of themselves. And so this is playing out real time. Things are changing. The biggest driver is investing in us. Finances. If we don't get the financial piece, no one wants to learn about the movement if they're sitting at home hungry. No one wants to talk about civil rights that haven't eaten in 3 days. Like, we have to take care of those with the least amongst us. And that doesn't mean that needs to be our sole focus. You know, we need to be multifaceted. And that's what, you know, so we're keeping all of my dad's work alive, his nutrition work, you know, the diet products, 4X formula, 3E, the energy drink. I mean, there's so many things that, as you know, I mean, again, I could do a documentary, again, just on what Dick Gregory ate and drank in the course of a day. It was that fascinating. The bag he would always have with him that just had all of, I mean, if he was stranded in the woods for a month, he would have been good because he had so many nutrients in that bag.
Do y'all have somebody made a suggestion? I mean, there's so many people in here. They got a lot of great insights or questions. One brother, I think Charlie Delgado, he asked, did your dad have like a meal list that you could approve and circulate, or do you have something that they could get?
So he did, but the only reason I wouldn't circulate it is it's something that was in his original formulation. And a lot of it is in Cooking with Mother Nature, but so much has changed since then. So I'm gonna, you know, sometimes we complicate things. My older brother Greg, there was a time when he had a neuropathy. There was some type of a nerve condition. We went to doctors all over the world. We finally decided to do an advanced food allergy profile on them. You know, so we take blood and we look at your IgE and your IgA immune response. And so one is immediate, one can be 2 days later. So we found out that his delayed immune response, he had a raging allergy to both soy and broccoli. And he ate a tremendous amount of broccoli, not realizing he was allergic to it. So it's what we call biochemical individuality. What is the best thing for you to eat is not the best thing for me to eat. So you have to kind of, part of it is listening to your body. So and I don't want to go too deep here, but there's a difference between a good diet and good nutrition. Good diet is just global good food choices. Good nutrition is how your body responds to. So if we say, hey, peanuts are a great source of protein, or almonds are, and every time you eat them, you throw up. Well, they're not great for you. So you have to learn, again, it's biochemical individuality. There is no one master list. And the moment we put it, sweet potatoes, I eat a lot of sweet potatoes. I have a lot of patients who are allergic to sweet potatoes. So the major thing is to, you know, I don't even need a list. Clean water, profoundly important, and nutritious food. And so whole foods, you know, not getting your food that's processed in parts, and a variety. As we say, most people need to eat less food because we put too much food on our plate.
Right,
So
right.
decrease the amount of food that you're eating. But the more colorful your plate, from beets to asparagus, the more and then don't kill your food. The amount of folks who go out and buy, you know, expensive vegetables and then boil the life out of them or bake the life out of them. You know, it's part of it is how we prepare the things that we put into the body. And so there's a lot of people, and, you know, and the verdict's not fully out on this, that there's a lot of thinking that by blending fruit, not vegetable, but fruit, you change the glycemic properties of it, and it actually is something that so if you have a smoothie and you're putting bananas and blueberries and raspberries, by blending it and changing the characteristics, the makeup of it, we're seeing a lot of new research come out that it's impacting people's glycemic index. It's actually causing them to have elevated blood sugar, although they're not, you know, fruit is sugar. I mean, it's fructose. And so, and not all sugar is bad for you at all, but it's how we deliver. So we have to do the, I really, really wish there was just a simple list that could put out like, eat this, eat this, eat this, eat that. But then half the people would get out there and might thrive. The other half may not. And then they say, oh, that's bullshit. I'm going back to Mickey D's. I felt bad eating Mickey D's. So it's important to know you have to do the work. And so you have to, if you have a car and you don't know to have the owner's manual, you don't know what gas it thrives on. So you fill the tank up with one type, see how it runs. Then fill it up the next time with that, see how it runs. Fill it up you have to do that type of research and analysis on your body. Keep a food journal. Write down the things that you're eating. If every 2 days after I eat figs, I don't feel well maybe there's an allergy to figs. But definitely, if you have insurance that will cover it, go get it. But most of us, man, if you saw the amount of folks who are vitamin D deficient. Right. So vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone, but I don't even have time to get into that. So vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone. At the time that medicine was identified vitamins, they misidentified vitamin E as a vitamin. It's actually a hormone, and it's a hormone that most people of color do not have enough of. Vitamin D, we can get aspects of it from the sun, and it's complicated. So vitamin D we get from food and fruits and vegetables and things. It's activated by the sun. So it's almost like you have my ATM card, but you don't have my passcode. So you don't have no money. So you can eat all the vitamin D you want, but if it's not being activated by the sun, you're not seeing the numbers right. Every Black person needs to get a vitamin D test. There's expensive as hell, and maybe it's because Black folks need it, so the price jumped up. But vitamin D tests are profoundly expensive if you don't have insurance. But every Black person needs to. Vitamin D is one of the few vitamins that the human body can get too much of. It's fat soluble. So someone can actually die from taking too much vitamin D, but someone, possibly. Everyone is virtually dying from not getting enough. So when I tell folks, oh, well, be careful, you know, it's like water. You can die from drinking too much water. Absolutely. Right. We hear about it every summer. Some fitness enthusiast that's drank too much water while they were sweating and have thrown off the electrolytes and die of a heart attack. Happens every summer. So you can die from drinking too much water. But 99.9% of the folks we know are dying from drinking too little water. So it's almost a disservice to discuss the possibilities of dying from drinking too much water without discussing the reality of how many of our people are dying from being dehydrated. So clean water. And a lot of that's going to come from filtering your own water. If it comes in a plastic jug, even if it's a clean plastic jug, when you open the cap, the little plastic clicks that show that little plastic drops in the water. Every time you use saran wrap, little tiny pieces of plastic get in your food. It's cumulative. Your body cannot process plastic, so it just stores it. Most of us are, you've never been to a plastic surgeon, but you're full of plastic, and it's triggering cancer. So it is. You have to people who use plastic cutting boards. And they're cutting them. Well, Feel the board. You feel all those scrapes on the board. Where do you think that plastic went? Into whatever you were cutting, into your belly. So some of this stuff, so go back to using wood and make sure the wood's not treated with some type of polyurethane that's getting into your food.
What about plastic, like spoons and forks?
Same thing, same thing.
Oh,
If,
God,
look,
Dr. Greg, it's like a nightmare. You say you don't like horror movies. This is a real life horror movie.
well, I mean, all you got to do is look at the statistics of what's impacting Black folks, and you see it is a horror movie. And most of it, again, it's not outside in, it's a thing. So if you boil some noodles and the water's incredibly hot, and now you're using plastic utensils for it. Yeah, of course, it's off gassing. People go, I see people with, oh, this food's too hot, and they leave the plastic fork in it while that plastic's just being leached into that meal. And so, yes, anywhere you can reduce your plastic consumption, human beings were not designed to eat plastic. Fish, the ocean right now is very unhealthy because of the amount of plastics that are full. Purchase your bag. Stop complaining when you go somewhere and there's a 5-cent bag tax. Like, good. Stop using plastic bags. Stop using styrofoam. Stop using all these things that, make our life faster and quicker. Pay a little more. I use plastic. I mean, I don't use it. There's zero plastic. I mean, in my home. So we have glass. We're using, yes, it can break. I buy Voss water, not because it's expensive, because it comes in glass. And so now, even still, the reason I prefer to filter my own water, when I open that Voss water and I have that plastic lock that clicks, well, there's still a plastic lining around. It's much better than, it's the lesser of evils. And I know my dad had a lot of opinions on the lesser of evils, but sometimes you really have to. So when I'm out and about, I don't always have access to certain, so I make an executive decision about the type of water I'm going to drink, the type of food I'm going to drink. I travel with a water bottle and I refill it. And I mean, right now, that's what some of the nicest restaurants you can go to now, they have their own water filtration, reverse osmosis, and it's some of the cleanest water. The water you should want to be water. That's what you want your water. You want it to be water. You don't want it to be all kind, and there's all kind of, things you can buy to test your water at home. So do the work. I mean, when you go to the doctor and you give a urine sample, I mean, you could get the strips on your own and on a regular basis once a month to pee in a cup, take the dipstick, look. Good information again. You have to know, don't wait till you're full-blown diabetic to realize you're starting to trend in a direction. I mean, we outsource too much to our medical providers, things we could do for ourselves. There's now apps you can connect to your phone. Take your blood pressure every day. Stand on a scale that sends a little electrical current up and it reads your body fat. It gives you your BMI. Like, these are the type of things you should obsess about. Like when you're driving down the street and you're looking at the instrument cluster, and especially these folks that think they're fast and the furious, they got tachometers. They're doing more time keeping their automobile fine-tuned and not keeping their body fine-tuned. Like, become passionate about feeling good. You can passionate about homeostasis. That is your body on a cellular level operating at its optimal frequency. Strive for that. Strive for that. It's a constant process. It's hard to get there. And we're not even talking about air quality, the things that are out of our control. Start taking care of the things that are in your control. I drive a Tesla. I don't pretend like I'm doing the best thing for the environment. I'm still polluting. I have to charge that car. Most of the fuels that are creating where I'm charging from are fossil fuels. So when I brake, rubber comes off of the tire. So, and when I use the brakes, we have particles coming off. So it's not like, oh, all you have to do is this. It's a constant process to try to get better and cleaner, drive more, live closer than where we were. These are all lifestyle things. And so the amount of time, do you know the psychosis? I spend a lot of time in LA and I see people that have a 2-hour commute to work, 5 people going to the same office, everyone got a separate car. Like, there's going to be a day that we look at that and just say, wow, there's some real dumb human beings on this planet. We're this close to cars driving themselves. That's not something folks should be afraid of. That's 40,000 Americans die every year. That's died, not injured in automobile accidents. There's folks high on drugs. There's folks sleepy, folks distracted, folks texting. Human beings are almost too busy to drive anymore. That's why young folks don't drive. They say, don't even, I know I can't. They take their phone in the shower with them and say, I know I can't drive. And so soon the technology, but every time there's an autonomous vehicle that crashes, people want to talk about that one crash. Is this science being perfected without talking about the 40,000 deaths each year that come from automobile accidents? 40, that's profound. And so, yes, so I don't feel comfortable with half the folks out here driving on the road with us. Every time you get in a plane, that's automation. That computers do a better job. That's why you trust your calculator more than you trust your brain. Do they ever get it wrong? Yes, absolutely. And we should be striving to get better, but we're this close. I mean, I use the auto drive feature on my car all the time. I don't get in the back seat. I don't go to sleep. I'm paying attention just like I used to with cruise control. It changes lanes. It gets off the highway for me. It does everything, but I'm awake and paying attention. In fairness, I glance down at my phone a little more often than I would do if I wasn't in a smart car. And there's plenty of times, even when I don't have it in autonomous mode, that I look down too long and it monitors your eyes. And I give it permission. There's an internal camera above the dashboard that it'll say, do you want to have this on you? I'm not selling Coke. I don't care if someone's looking at what I'm doing in the car. They'll probably be thoroughly entertained. I would rather have the additional safety. So when the camera sees what's happening, it communicates to the airbags. This stuff's real time. I mean, the algorithms in these vehicles, we're going to look at old car technology, which is what most new cars are now. In the future, in my future, I mean like 10 years, and we're going to be shocked that people drove such dumb technology. And that's why so when you look at, I thought I was a man when I had my Nextel flip phone. I compare that to a modern smartphone, one of them's almost laughable. So when my first smartphone came out, I was like, I don't understand what's so smart about it. Now it's become part of our brain. And there's a good and bad to that. I mean, part of the fact, I think there was a time as a young man, I probably had 25 phone numbers memorized. I barely know my own number now. I know my mom's number, because it hasn't changed. Other than that, and that's why we're seeing young folks get Alzheimer's at alarming, and dementia at alarming levels because we're outsourcing our brain. So, pick a new language to learn, find a new instrument. I tell folks all the time, stop doing the same workout in the gym you did when you were 18. Work out for the person you want to be 20 years from now. Look at societies, what we call blue zones, where people grow old gracefully. They're doing a lot of Tai Chi. They're doing a lot of yoga, Pilates, but really do the things. So do things now. If you say, oh, well, I'm a marathon runner, well, at some point you're not going to be able to run marathons anymore. And so you're going to have to try to find some new passion. Find the things now. Work out for the person you want to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. Do something that you can still do 10 years from now, 20. We're too obsessed with the now. The person you are now was what you built 5 years ago. Start focusing on what you want. That's why most people fail their diets, because they're trying to change it now. No, you change a diet for who you want to evolve. And you can't change 20 years of horrible eating by doing a 6-month diet. And so my dad when the Bahamian diet first came out, it was expensive. And the Caribbean diet's expensive now because it's a lot of good stuff in it, and good stuff costs money. And that back then, that's when folks could say ghetto or welfare system. My dad would say, this fat, and this was part of his set. This fat welfare sister came up to me and said, Brother Dick, I'm trying to lose all this, but your product is too expensive. And he would say, dear lady, you're going to have to pay Brother Dick the same way you paid all these white folks all that money at the grocery store to put all that weight on your ass. You're going to have to pay Brother Dick to take it off. Stop looking for a discount when you want something from us. Pay for good stuff. Reward good stuff. And so if you get in a pattern of doing that, you'll find so much more good stuff starts to flow into your nucleus. The folks I talk to at the farmer markets I go to, I learn new stuff all the time because I'm surrounding myself about folks who are hungry and want to share that knowledge, not so I can keep it, but so I can do, we've been on the phone for a good minute. We've been on this for a good minute. I can do another 5 hours of this because there's just so much in here, and it's an honor to share it because this isn't something I want to say, hey, I'm the only person that knows this. It used to be common sense. You know, it used to, but
It used to
again,
be.
common sense is not good sense anymore. There's a lot of, because we have industrialized sense. You got to take a test for it. You got to study for the test. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if we all went to China today and you don't understand Mandarin Chinese, you might as well be dumb as rocks because you don't know what a 2-year-old's saying. So all that intelligence, if you can't, how do all the animals know to leave before an earthquake, before a tsunami? But these big brain mammals, us, don't.
Mhm.
So we got to reconnect with the universe. And the wonderful silver lining during COVID was just to slow down enough to go on 6-mile hikes and just
Mhm.
really connect with nature, to not have to fly 5 times a week, to really kind of be able to feel human again. And I know things are going to change back. So I didn't stress during the pandemic. Man, I feel like the cicadas coming out right now, man. I feel rested and ready to go because I really did. I had no fear of the disease. Not for me. I had fear for people around me, but I had no fear of the disease, and I respected it, and it's so learn to respect things, learn to take care of your mind, body, and soul, start getting sleep, drink clean water, eat clean food, real food, stop cooking your food wrong, and stop putting horrible shit on top of your food after you make it. So much of it is just all the seasoning that folks put on things. We used to have to, seasoning was, African Americans used so much more seasoning for the sole purpose of, we used to, as slaves, we got horrible food. The food was spoiled. It was ruined. We had to dock it up. Hey, many of us have made it now. That's not
Mhm.
the same. The okra is not slimy anymore. The greens haven't gone bad anymore. Stuff's not Stop putting all that shit on it and learn to enjoy the flavor profile that these fruits and vegetables give off naturally.
I want to. Somebody brought up. I got a very educated following, or whatever, and they brought up what you just, like, you hitting everything, like you reading my mind or something. But they asked, like, what do you say about eating raw collard greens to kill cancer cells, Dr. Gregory, as your father mentioned? Is that, you have heard?
Listen, earlier here, you heard me say that the National Institute of Health and the National Cancer Research Institutes have spent trillions, with a T, of
Mhm.
dollars in the last 30 years or longer researching cancer.
Mhm.
And most people don't understand what cancer is. And so, like, there's really nothing that's going to, as I said, you and I have cancer cells that have grown in our body during this call. Sometimes even more, depending on what's in the home that we're in. So if we're in a sick, toxic home, you have more cancer cells being produced than I do. And so as the immune system, if you think of cancer cells, I want to get back to what you just asked, as a
Mhm.
soup assembly line. So we got all tomato soup coming. And my job as the picker is to find the dented, the damaged cans, the ones the label's upside on, the ones that have the dent in it, the ones that's leaking. That's what your immune system does. As those cancer cells, it's plucking and killing them. It's plucking and killing them. But now, if I come and put a bag over your head and hit you upside your head, now you're fighting sickness and disease. Now you're confused. Your immune system's on the ropes. All those damaged cans, i.e., cells, are now getting past the immune system and they're starting to grow. And as cancer cells start to grow, that's where tumors come from. And bloodborne cancers just mean that a bloodborne cancer just means that the tumors, the cancer is forming in your blood and moving all around the world through your blood. So there's not one particular tumor, but the cancer is still very real and it can set up shop almost anywhere. And so, yes, the trillions of dollars came back with a lot of things, but nothing more important than green leafy vegetables. Green leafy, and I said, wow, as I said earlier in the show run, you don't have to spend $1 trillion for me to tell you, eat more green leafy vegetables. I mean, it keeps you should never eat a single meal that doesn't have some green leafy vegetables. So collards, Brussels sprouts, and they can't be genetically modified. You have to really, again, the reason we have genetically modified food is because it allows industry to take over. We have genetically modified seeds because it allows industry to take over. You can't grow turnips unless you use our seeds. And so we've modified the seeds that it will only grow 1 year. The next year, the farmer has to go back and buy the 2021 turnip seed. Well, that's all because farmers were able to dig in the earth and reclaim the seeds and use them over and over again. I mean, it's industry. Stop allowing, we always talk about the prison or the military industrial complex. Stop focusing on stop cherry picking the demon industries and realize most industry. The reason in my practice I never sold supplements as a chiropractor, and I know lots of doctors do, is because my practice is a business. And sure, I would love to have additional revenue streams. But the moment I become a slave to those revenue streams, so if I have 20 bottles of vitamin E and they're getting ready to expire in a week, suddenly everyone that comes in needs vitamin E, because I don't want to eat the loss, because I know it's not going to hurt you, but it also may not be necessary that you need it. So finding purity normally means, and you can't live your life without industry, but you just need to realize industry, medicine is not a healthcare system in this country. It's a sick care system. So if I say, hey, I went to the doctor, they said I'm putting on a little weight. They told me that come back in 6 months, they'll check my blood pressure again. If it hasn't gone down, they're going to start me on blood pressure medication. Instead of saying, do this for the next 6 months, and I'm certain your blood pressure will go down. Come back so I can reward you and say, you fixed it. But we say, nope, not yet. Come back next year. We'll probably need to start this medicine. It's a sick care system. And the system, and it wasn't until we had to go around looking for sanitizer and gloves that we started going to medical supply shops in our community, that I realized that all these medical supply stores, they're just centers for diabetics. Everything in there is wound care, it's crutches, it's canes, it's scooters, and they're disproportionately in our community because there's certain communities that don't even have dialysis centers. And then you look at how heavily dialysis centers are in our community. So this is an industry. And so right now, if you and I came up with a formulation, which would be impossible because you can't eradicate cancer like that, because cancer is natural. It's something naturally occurring in the body. But if we did come up with a system to eradicate cancer, we would probably bankrupt most of the leading industrial nations, because that's how much money they make and they spend in cancer treatments and research. So they would kill us before we even got to make the announcement, because they're not going to let two cats, especially two brothers, wipe out, the economy of 7 leading economies in the world. So there is no true urgency to, and some would say that, if we prolong all these lives, without addressing prolonging quality of life, there's been plenty of people I've home that plenty of people's homes I go to that, Black folks, we typically keep our elders in the home instead of outsourcing them to facilities. I'll go in and be like, oh, grandma's upstairs. She got an oxygen tube. She hasn't been out of the bed in 15 years. And, we're maintaining vital signs for some of these folks, and some of these folks in the hospital, we're maintaining, but some of these folks haven't been alive in some time. But for us, because we're always so afraid of loss, we say, well, we got to keep you around even if you're not here. Right. So we have to stop turning the birthing process and the dying process into a medical emergency. And so that's why I was, my dad didn't die being treated like a guinea pig. Paul Mooney died at home. Big Rudy and him were cussing each other out. Paul said, go make me a sandwich, called them all kind of niggas. He went to go make the sandwich. And when he walked back in, Paul was on the ground and he was trying to resuscitate him, but he had a massive heart attack. And from what Rudy said, not an ounce of pain or discomfort. It was like he was potentially oblivious to it because it hit so quick. And when I go, I don't know when we're going to go, but I know I don't want to be in the hospital with all kind of tubes and cutting and experimentation. And for folks who want that, great. But, I'll wind up there because I'm an organ donor and I want to, when I do go, I don't need to take all this with me, because the only thing I'm worried about is where my spirit's going, everything else. And you look at folks who, they put all this money, they get buried, they go, and it's like, well, wait a minute. Right. That's just give the mineral back its minerals, give the body back its mineral salts. That's some selfish shit. And I understand there's religious reasons, so I don't get, but to me, it's just crazy. It's like, we're borrowing things, give it back to the universe. So it is, no, man, I probably kept you too long, Ron, but it's a lot. It's always good to chat with you, man.
Yeah, it's been 3 years, 3 years due. So I guess I got to ask you, like,
absolutely.
I know you said your father's body is no longer in the original spot, right? Is it anywhere where people can access it publicly? Is that possible? Or is it...
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So he's still at the same Fort Lincoln Cemetery. Matter of fact, he's the most frequently visited tomb there, and for good reason. You know, this it's and part of that visitation is me. So it's and I'm clear. You know, my dad's omnipresent. You know, I go there just for my own mental health and really just to pay respect. But the truth in paying respect is living our lives right. But yes, and so if that was always temporary, that's not going to be his permanent resting place. So what Dr. King passed away. It was about 8 years before they built the King Center and relocate. And I don't treat all of us are human beings, but some of us leave a bigger impact, and we want to allow where they're laid to rest to be symbolic and encourage others to live lives of service. So we're in talks right now with the National Cathedral here in DC to relocate my dad. And that's been the plan all along. My dad and I had discussed that. We spent tremendous amount of times there. It's very close to Rock Creek Park where he walked and exercised. The earthquake we had here, believe it or not, about 12 years ago, did significant damage to the National Cathedral. So they're still doing quite a bit of work there. It'll probably be another year or so before we relocate him there. And it'll be a place that, Pops loved being around the people. He hated being cold. So, he'll be inside near the people, near the decision makers, still waving his finger in people's face and still cussing folks out, man. So, all this is still a process. It's as much as I knew my dad wouldn't be here forever, his energy was such that you thought the brother would live to be 200. So it really caught a lot of us flat-footed, even though we knew, because it just was something that, most people are in a bit of denial about losing their parents. And so that denial sometimes can leave you flat-footed. So I tell everyone, get a will, have a living will, share that with your children. Don't surprise people. A couple of folks in my family were a little surprised by my dad's desire and his wills, and it made my life a little challenging. So let people know, and it wasn't intentional, it wasn't intentional at all that he didn't share it. I learn from things and want others to do better. Include intellectual property in your will. Most people talk about tangibles without talking about intangibles. You must talk. And and I knew I'd forget the name here, but there's a beautiful website. I'll send you the information, but it basically is, and you can put it up to the folks who are following your show. It's someplace where you can store all of your passwords. So Dropbox, iCloud, all of these things. And then you pick who upon your death, and once your death certificate, I think it's like 2 months after someone presents your death certificate to this company, they follow your orders, and you update it every year. So I've had this for about 4 years. I update it every year. I want my iCloud information to go to my wife. I want this to go to my sister. I want this to go here. The folks who I know, some of my co-editors get some of the content that's in my phone, because otherwise you die with these passcodes locked. And now because of privacy laws, they can't be unlocked. You can't pay for someone to unlock it. And so, your Bible worth of information is now just gone forever because no one can ever get into it. I mean, I think, no exaggeration, I have close to 50,000 photographs on my phone, 12,000 videos. I mean, my whole dad's, social media and everything he did was all, half of this movie you're going to see was all derived from clips that are on my phone. So I have to give that to someone, otherwise it all dies here. And what a disservice if all of that creation we do goes nowhere when we pass, because we didn't you can't use the same will your parents and grandparents used. Times have changed. So we need to digitally update. And that's part of the beauty of NFTs, is as you put these deeds, it's like a house. Well, we know who's going to go to your house because it's on the deed. So we know who owns it. We know where it's going to go. And so most people do a good job insulating their physical, their tangible property, not a good job, their intellectual property. And now because of this, we all have, your tweets, your text, all of this is intellectual property. So this is a joy, man. We definitely can't wait 3 years. So just to be clear, the documentary comes out on the 4th of July. The moment the premium cable network makes the announcement, I'm going to shoot it to you so you can blast it out there. Like I tell folks, the family, the estate, we've already got our money, so we're not telling you to watch it for us. We're telling you to watch it because it's incredible. And so there will be a different type of conversations had once people watch this documentary, and honestly watch it, experience it. So it's powerful. You'll hear folks in the press talking about it because on Juneteenth is when it's going to premiere at Tribeca Film Festival.
And it's sold out too. It's so even the streaming for Father's Day sold out. I mean, it's amazing.
It's the love is real, and it's my dad always knew. He knew. I mean, he died knowing that his people loved him. He was crystal clear on that because he earned that. He wasn't hoping for it. Yeah. You already know how he feels about hope. He's all over the internet telling you about hope. He didn't hope it happened. He earned it, and he trusted it because he knew it to be fact. So, no, Brother Ron, it's always a pleasure, man. I'll check in again as we start to put in motion so many of the things that my dad's intellectual property is birthing. And I'm one of 10. So, me, like most Gregory's, can talk endlessly. My dad once famously did an interview on C-SPAN, a book club, and it was an hour-and-a-half show. And the white cat who was hosting said, "This is Mr. Gregory. This is the only time I asked one question, and it took up the entire hour-and-a-half show." So he was fair. He was balanced, genes, man.
He definitely was a Libra. He was balanced. He was balanced. How you
very. There's no question about it, man. Love and appreciate you, brother. Take good care, and I'm going to keep you posted real time, man.
Okay, and how can people follow you on social media? I mean, if anything.
So all of the Dick Gregory handles. Most of my heavy stuff I put there. Dr. Christian Gregory on Instagram, but most of the real heavy lifting. The Instagram page is kind of where I just interact with the nieces and nephews and be nosy to make sure they're living their lives right. Make sure there's not no Big Macs on their plate. But no, so Dr. Christian Gregory, half the stuff I post on my dad's page with my links in it, it's all good stuff. It's about to be this year, man, all the silver linings. Now that COVID's lifting, we got to take better care of ourselves. We got to start drinking clean water. We just have to, if we knew better, we do better. So anyone who's listening now, they at least know there's a different perspective. So you must take the time to do the research. This is wow. Minuscule what we've rapped about here today, man. What we've talked about, none of this is reflective in the totality how I live my life. It's impossible to express that in a format such as this. But the folks around me, when they see you doing things and they see you looking good and fit, I still can out bench press all my nieces and all my nephews, especially the ones that think they're He-Man. I still can outrun them, can outlast them on a trail. And that speaks for itself. That lets folks know that say, hey, I don't know. One of my, I turned 51 this year, and my dad always would, and my mom, it was, average folks begin life at 21, great folks begin life at 50. And they were always careful to see to it that we were certain to understand that the definition of great was by how much service we gave. So as a service renderer, a service giver, I really didn't, everything else was practice up until I hit 50. So once I hit 50 last year, I said, okay, now it's go time. And then the silver linings of the pandemic allowed me to hit the gym harder, hit the trail harder, long walks with nature to really rest up. So now at 51, with all these projects, and many of them I've been working on for 6 years, to come out now, I have bountiless energy to move forward with it and to really be a keeper of the flame. A lot of people will hear me talk or hear us, Gregory, say, oh, you're trying to fill your dad's shoes. Never. Out of absolute respect, we've always kept my dad's shoes out there, and all 10 of us just wanted to keep them clean and shining and
That's
make
right.
people aware of what, because man, I'm just regurgitating. I'm just doing what I was spoon fed and paying it forward to say, hey, look, I listened and we're paying it forward. It was never a, none of us, my dad would always say, because we would have just hilarious conversations like, hey, Doc, you need to get up on stage. Why would, being an entertainer, you've admitted was a bad job. So why would you even want me, to come out there and all the bounce checks that the nightclubs would get? Why would you, if you love and appreciate it, there's no way. The best laughs we ever get is around family, amongst family. Keep the laughter going, keep the love going, especially now there's so much hurt due to the death, the fear. And so, fearing God can't occupy the same space. Brother Dick Gregory hasn't gone anywhere. He's omnipresent. His energy, his words, his wisdom, his intellect is all around us. There's a marvelous team of folks that are just, assisting me as I assist them to do the right thing, because we've learned so much as we move forward. And we're sharing that. I mean, the first call I had with Paul Mooney's family is, and the same call I had after Cicely Tyson passed away. And let me be very clear, Paul Mooney, Cicely Tyson, neither of them passed away, had anything to do with COVID, anything to do with a vaccine or a COVID vaccine. Now it's, again, fear is an industry. So the moment someone dies, because it's like AIDS in the 80s. Anyone that died, you could have slipped and hit your head on the ice and died. You had AIDS. So both of those deaths had nothing to do with COVID-19, had nothing to do with the COVID vaccine. These were some of the healthiest folks that I knew. They lived their life right. They lived their life clean. It's just being out there on the front line, taking blows, spiritual blows to the head and saying stuff that folks really didn't want you to say. It's a tough business. I mean, it's a very tough business. I'm grateful that for their service, and it definitely is something that all of us need to pay forward. So I shed a few tears after Paul passed, not because I was sad for him, because it just forced me to reflect all of the hurt and pain these cats from that day, from that generation endured, and they didn't turn. They never turned their back on their people. And it would have been easy for them to do, to justify a payday, to justify, a check. It would have been easy. They never stopped. They never gave up on their people. And, Paul, he did a good amount of work to offset in some of the detriment of slavery. I mean, white folks got a healthy dose of course, I'm not saying it's comparable, but I bear witness to to Paul and his genius and his magic. I encourage anyone anyone listening, to go online, pull up brother Michael over at Real Black. He has some great clips up on his platform. It was real genius. Once in a blue moon, we get someone that comes along that talented, that true, that pure, unwilling to, sure, we can, as my dad would say, show me my good. Like, I don't want to see, all of us, I dig deep enough, you can find bad on everyone, whether it's intentional or unintentional. Showcase our good, showcase the good work that these folks have done, and that they never, they never turn their back, and that's hard to do. I mean, you think about some of the most financially challenging situations you've been in, and like, damn, well, I might be willing to sell this. I might be willing to do that to try to bridge this financial divide. And so they had plenty of that. And yet they said no. And I say they because my dad's included in that. They stayed true to their purpose and just stayed on the front line, man. And I'm not on the front line. I'm in the infantry bringing the supplies up to the front line. I haven't had a tough enough life to even understand what the front line is, man. I mean, and that's a blessing. And we should all hope that our children are brought up in a way that they have so much clarity and love for self and love for who they are and love for their culture that they never feel like they need to get that validation outside. It's above down, inside out. And that really is a true, but you could talk to any of my siblings, and they're going to rock you with the same energy, because it was just, it's who we are, it's who we continue to be, and it's who we will always be. You can chop it up 10 years from now, and I'm going to be the same cat, man. I owe it to you, I owe it to my dad, and I owe it to us, man. So love and appreciate you, brother. Always a pleasure. I'll be in touch very soon. Peace to you, peace to your followers, peace to your listeners, and keep up the good work, man.
We love you,
folks
man.
need to go ahead and absolutely. And folks need to get on that Cash App, that Venmo, all of it going on across the bottom of it there, because that's important, man. We got to support the stuff we like, man. We got to support the truth tellers. And there's not a whole lot of, we spend a whole lot of money supporting folks lying to us, and it's time to kind of balance that out, man. So, love and appreciate you, man. Take good care. My wife's looking at me now, but I said I'm doing a quick hour interview with Brother Ron. No, you're a good brother, as my dad would always say, man. So take good care. And I don't know, are you going to hit me with the trumpet when you edit this piece? Because unless I missed it, I'm feeling a particular way. I didn't get that blessing, brother. So
you get the blessing. We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
I appreciate you, man. Keep up the good work. Take good care, and we'll talk soon, man.
All right, take care. God bless, man. Thank you so much.
See you, brother. God bless. Bye bye now. Peace to you.
Wow, this was very epic. I didn't expect this to be almost 4 hours, man. It's been a minute since me and Brother Christian spoke. It was back in 2018, and it felt good, man. It was like flowing. I could feel his father's spirit in essence, and I see a lot of y'all enjoyed the conversation or the interview. He definitely is his father's son. He's definitely his father's son. So thank y'all for being patient and listening and receiving the good word. And I guess I've been decent. Yeah, he is interesting, Sister Sunshine. He's a very fascinating brother. He's a good brother. He's a Taurus like me. He was born May 13th. I believe Stevie Wonder was also born May 13th, and he was close to Baba Dick Gregory as well. I remember Steve performed at his homegoing celebration. But that funeral was like almost 10 hours long. So, and worthy because of who Baba Dick Gregory was and is. So y'all look out for that documentary coming out this summer and some other things. And like I said, he said he had 5 more hours in him. These guys have the older guys have all the energy, like Judge Joe Brown, all them guys, they have a lot of energy. So I'm trying to learn the secrets, but I hope that this have benefited you all. It's kind of weird right now in YouTube land and all this other stuff with freedom of speech and stuff. He said some things. I don't believe in censorship. I believe that people should live their truths, should speak their truths, and it is what it is. But thank y'all. Let me read this disclaimer though. Try to protect myself. Not really worried about protection like that, but yeah, like he said, his father is very omnipresent, and I'm thankful for the time I spent with Baba Dick Gregory, and I was able to share some of the stuff he shared with me, with the people. But here's the disclaimer: the views expressed by host and guests on the We All Be TV platform are not the official views or opinions or beliefs or perspectives of We All Be News or the We All Be Group Incorporated. We All Be News is an organization that thoroughly believes in supplementing the information narrative that is usually supplied by the corporate news entities with those viewpoints and expressions which may be marginalized or ignored for a plethora of reasons. We are about informing the general public on alternative perspectives as it relates to news and information, and letting the general public be the ultimate judge in deciding how to use said information. Informed citizens are responsible citizens. Thank you for your support. Thank y'all so much. Many thanks and amplified blessings to you and your families. And y'all have a great and productive and safe weekend. And know that the best is yet to come. And we love you madly. I'll just shout. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See? Yeah, God bless them both. Now they back. Paul checked out here on Malcolm X's birthday. Malcolm was a close friend of Baba Dick Gregory. You see how it works? It's somewhere. So wish them ultimate blessings. Thank you. Y'all keep on coming out. Outstanding, huh? Okay, I appreciate it. We love you madly. No problem. Thank y'all for tuning in. And that does it. See y'all again. Best is yet to come.